Second down, they'll go a little more conservative. Don't tell that to Bryson Washington. Touchdown! 51 yards.
Live from the Hilton Post Oak for the Texas Bowl, this is 365 Sports.
Here's Durham. Here goes the freshman sensation, Caden Durham. And the Golden Band from Tigerland is going to play into the night.
Our Kinder's Texas Bowl coverage is brought to you by Camille Johnson Realtors, Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, IdealMRI.com, Marco's Pizza, The Baylor Club, Pioneer Steel and Pipe, Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac, Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine.
Baylor 2 for 2 scoring touchdowns here today. Robertson checks it down to Pendergrass. Pendergrass elusive and finds the yellow paint.
GXG Baylor's NIL Collective, Waco Custom Marketplace, TexasBeefHouse.com, Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, Alliance Bank, The Niche Group, Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement, The Carrion Group, the First National Bank of Central Texas.
Tyron Lacey, the motion man. Pump fake, Nussmeier goes back shoulder. Touchdown! Tyron Lacey! And LSU wins!
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
Well, good afternoon as we head into a new year, but a couple of days to go, including today, Monday, December 30th, and tomorrow. Of course, Baylor and LSU here in Houston at the Texas Bowl, the Kinder's Texas Bowl. We'll have more on that. We'll hear from Dave Aranda in just a moment. We'll update you on games. There's a game going on now. I'll just throw it out there. It's Iowa 21, Missouri 14 in the second quarter. There is a lot to get to. Looking back, and we're not going to be able to review everything when we've been out of pocket for a week. Paul's back with us on Thursday. Garrett Ross is here with me. And, of course, there's Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak. And thanks to all the great sponsors you heard off the top of the show. We will get into the games, the Big 12 wins, a loss or two, but they've had a nice run, except one team beat another in the game between BYU hammering Colorado and Deion Sanders and company. And then, of course, the college football playoff semifinals tomorrow night, and then 3 games coming up on Wednesday, including that Texas and Arizona State game. It's been a fun break. We've been able to decompress. Craig just drove in from Tyler. I drove in with Garrett separately a little bit earlier today from Waco. And thanks to Raymond and Mario, who are here in where we are here at the Hilton Post Oak. And thank you for serving our country, Mario. 1962 to 82, serving our country. Great to see you. Mike Dewey was here a minute ago, who's the tailgate king. Craig, we've missed a lot. We'll get into some of that as we go. Your thoughts, did you decompress?
Yeah, I did. I did decompress a good bit, and it was nice to have a bit of a break, and I honestly couldn't have asked for a better break than missing out on all of the conversation around the first round of the playoffs, because I think I would have bashed my head against the wall with all of the whining and crying and, for lack of a better term, bitching and moaning that went on over the last few days while we were gone. So I did not miss having to be in the heat of that. I enjoyed being able to just kind of observe it, and you know what, just turn it off when I didn't really have any room for it. So, yeah, the break was good. We missed out on a little bit of the madness in a good way, and glad to be here and be back and to start talking about it all again.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to get into when it comes to the transfer portal. Baylor just received a minute ago a commitment from a young man, 6'5", 255 edge out of Oregon. He's from Oregon. He played at Oregon. Marion Winston has committed to Baylor. That's the second edge rusher. We will detail some of that, also including the Auburn quarterback and Walker White, who committed to them just in the last 2 or 3 days. That's to the right. We'll get to that. Let's get to some of the games. Let's get to what happened, including, I mentioned the update. Let's break down BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, and TCU came up with wins. for the Big 12, and let's start with what BYU did to Colorado.
Yeah, that was a game that I was very much looking forward to and really didn't enjoy watching much of it from a competitive standpoint because BYU just throttled them, just absolutely destroyed the Buffaloes and did not leave any doubts about who the better team on that particular night down in San Antonio was. So that was a tremendous win for Kalani Sitake and his football team, who I know still feel a little bit spurned by the fact they didn't get at least a little bit more playoff love, not necessarily a spot, not necessarily anything just given to them, but they weren't even in the conversation, really, when it came down to those outlier teams. Ole Miss got plenty of discussion, or Alabama got plenty of discussion. BYU got little to no discussion, and I think the timing of their losses and where they started off at the beginning of the season probably played into that, but they had a big exclamation point on what was a great season otherwise. I think you feel like there could have been more, obviously. I mentioned the playoff, didn't even appear in the Big 12 championship game, but outside of those two things, you did just about everything you could possibly do. You beat your arch rival in dramatic fashion. You won a bunch of close games. You won double-digit games. You competed for the Big 12. You just couldn't hold on there at the very end, but I think that was a great way to close out what was a fantastic season for Sitake and the Cougars, and I think that's a team that you start to look at, and it's too early, but it's not, because seasons are ending, so you start to look ahead at next year and you go, yep, I think BYU is going to get a lot more respect in the preseason poll than they got this last time around.
They jumped on them quickly, Garrett. They also had the onside kick early. They had the fake punt. They ran back a punt.
Correct.
They were all in Shadur's business. He had nothing. There were a couple of plays that they made, but this was dominant in every shape and form of what you could do for BYU and Kalani Sitake.
No, it really was. I think it was a kind of a testament to what he's been able to build with that program and how BYU kind of rallied after nobody really understood what they were going to be coming into the season, and they continually got better. I think they were the more prepared team for this game. I think there was a lot of distractions partially around Colorado, and I mean rightfully so when you have the NFL looking at Shadur and Travis Hunter, you got the Heisman and everything. I just felt like there was a lot more distraction for the Buffs than there was for Kalani Sitake and BYU, whereas they just go in with that workman mentality, that blue collar, and they just went out there and took it to Colorado. The physicality in that game from the Cougars to me was the big difference, and the fact that Colorado's offensive line, like that, well, they reverted back to 2023 or something.
Well, they reverted back to earlier this year. Yeah. It reminded me early about how Nebraska thumped them pretty quickly and then got them out of their rhythm. We got some folks here, and I'm going to try to get to all the names at some point. I'm going to give you a list, write your name down, where you're from. I already mentioned Raymond and Mario and Mike Dewey, who are here with us today at the Hilton Hotel Post Oak in Houston, around near the Galleria. Iowa State. This game was unbelievable, dramatic, and they found a way. They had a 15-play, 75, 80-yard drive, took up about 5 or 6 minutes off the clock to win it, and a huge year for Matt Campbell. First ever 10-win year, and now first ever 11-win year, and what a great win for them at 42-41.
Yeah, it was a really fun and entertaining game. I think the biggest story coming out of that, just in general, was Cam Ward obviously sitting out the second half and all of the conversation that surrounded that. It appeared to me, because I don't know if we'll get to it or not, he wanted to break the NCAA record, and once he had that, he decided, all right, I've got that. I want to go ahead and stay healthy. Now, you can debate whether that was selfish or whatever you want to call it, but that was pretty clear to me what it was. And so that left a little bit of a weird taste as far as that game goes, but not if you're Iowa State. You had a thriller, and you had an opportunity there to go and close this season with a huge win, and you took care of business. 11-3 on the year. You're going to finish in the top 20, around the top 15, record-breaking season, and a lot of guys coming back from this team that, again, you start to look ahead at next year, and it's too early, but it's not. That's another team that I think will get a lot of love because they'll have Becht and company all returning, but he was really good. Becht made some huge plays in that game, and I just thought that was one of the more entertaining contests that I saw throughout the break because there were a lot of blowouts. Now, it wasn't just a playoff. It was a lot of bowl games that were blowouts, a lot of NFL games that were blowouts, but this was actually one of those that left you, sitting there to the very end on the edge of your seat wondering who was going to come through, and it was the Cyclones. So good for them and a big win for the Big 12.
I saw a lot of, Cam Ward didn't play in the second half. The game was tight when he was in the game at halftime, and all this about, who was you're playing with who you have. Everybody's got players who aren't there. some more than others. Great win for Iowa State, 42-41. And what were your thoughts about Cam Ward? And whatever the truth might be, you kind of wish Mario Cristobal would have just nutted that pretty quickly off the top.
Well, I mean, I think I would have liked him, if he was going to play, I would have liked him to play the whole game, personally. But I understand where we're at right now. I understand not everybody can be like Colorado and put insurance policies out for players and things. I mean, you probably can, but, they were the forefront of that. So I understand it from that perspective. I think it's frustrating for Miami that it comes down to literally a final drive and you don't have your guy in there when you can make the argument that he would have, obviously he would have put him in a better position to drive the field. But at the same time, like, I think it's one where I don't like it, but I understand the situation. Now, Mario Cristobal should have nipped that in the bud. That's on him. So any questions going at Cam Ward, that needs to go to the coach, in my opinion.
And anytime someone, especially like my age, or even it doesn't have to be my age, but you're like, I'm not being a get off my lawn. Do whatever you want to do. It's your career. You play if you want. You can take yourself out. It's just kind of hard to kind of understand and fathom, in my opinion. But he did get the record as far as touchdown passes and was good. He wasn't great, and it was not a one-sided game while he was there. And when he was there, the game was tight at halftime, and then Iowa State had that march down the field to win it in the last few minutes. K-State got a win. This was also dramatic. TCU blew out Louisiana. Those are the 4 teams in the Big 12 who won. Those were a couple other games to bring up before we get into a little bit of that LSU-Baylor game and much more.
Yeah, K-State and Rutgers was another one of the more entertaining games. I thought Tech and Arkansas was a pretty entertaining game as well, although obviously you don't mention them because Tech not able to get the W. Their first bowl loss for Joey McGuire in his 3 tries. But, yeah, K-State had a really nice ending, and Rutgers just the back and forth in that game. Big fourth quarter by K-State to grab hold of the lead and hold on to it. Dylan Edwards with an absolutely monstrous game. Obviously, Avery Johnson's going to get some love, and rightfully so. But another team where you, again, start to look at next year and maybe a springboard launching pad. I don't know in this era of NIL how much momentum carries over, really. All I know is it does give you some extra time to practice with your guys, and I think this was definitely beneficial for a Kansas State team that was kind of trying to hold it all together there at the end. Did not finish particularly strong in the Big 12 title race, even though they were one of the favorites to begin with, but they did finish the season strong amidst weeks of rumors about Chris Kleiman and his future and just kind of the trajectory. I think you got to take a deep breath, enjoy a win, and finally get into the offseason and kind of regroup if you're the Wildcats. But a nice win there to go ahead and close it on out. Also want to Ted Phipps is here. Randall and Cam, is it Hayden? Are here too, and so we appreciate everybody who's sitting there. It's kind of a nice big room. It's not, but we are here, and we appreciate people finding us. We're about maybe 50 yards from the entry of the lobby here at the Hilton Post Oak in Houston in the Galleria. All right, Baylor and LSU tomorrow is 2:30. Yes, Wednesday, Arizona State, Texas. We're going to get into that too. Let's get into Baylor and also LSU. I would have lost body parts back in September if somebody would have said that Baylor was trying to win 9 games in a bowl game against LSU, and even a good bowl game like the Texas Bowl in Houston. I would have lost fingers, whatever, if I would have bet on that, because I never would have thought that's happened. But they made the run, the opposite of 2022 when they cratered down the stretch, and of course 23 was awful. But they're here trying to get to 9-3, and every time I've heard Dave Aranda say anything, it's important for us to win the game. Now, you may think that's always the case, but he has reiterated that over and over and over again to keep the momentum. Yeah, trying to get to 9-4, not 9-3.
9-4,
finish 8-4 in the regular season, but trying to get 9 wins, and that would be a nice little mark to hit. They started off with such low expectations. I think in general with the program, they just kind of kept to themselves and kept their heads down and kept working. And despite the way people perceived how the season would go and the way that it did start off, they just continued to chip away, and they were close. I mean, that Colorado game, we all know that should have been a win. They absolutely let that one get away, and so probably a bit of an overall overreaction to that just because it felt like the ball and then the BYU loss, and it starts to slide downhill, and you're going, they can't close games. Where are the wins going to come from? And then man, they got out of that little funk there in that tough part of that early season schedule, and you realize, like, wow, Iowa State's pretty good, and BYU's pretty good, and these teams they're playing, they're losing relatively close depending on which game you're talking about, and they're in it and they're showing signs, but are they ever going to be able to get over the hump? And eventually they did. They did get over that hump, and they closed the season incredibly strong. Sawyer Robertson's fantastic. Jake Spavital and the changes he made on the offense and the way that Robertson's play, the emergence of Bryson Washington, Josh Cameron entering star status himself, the offensive line being much better than anybody could have anticipated with the changeover to Mason Miller, especially late before the coaching hires were kind of finalized. It felt like, all right, you got your guys, and then Mason Miller, you have to make that change late. He comes in. So they had a lot of moving parts, a lot of plates in the air throughout the offseason, and never would I have imagined, given where they were last spring or the way the first month of the season went, that, like you said, they would be right here. But that's a testament to Aranda and the players that they just blocked out people like us. They blocked out, whatever it was that wasn't healthy for them as a team, and they stuck together, and they put their heads down, and they learned how to win. They've learned how to finish, and they showed that over and over down the stretch, and that's led to a pretty fun game coming up tomorrow.
How many of you in the room here today would have said or lost a body part had you bet a body part, which none of you are that dumb like I would be, to say they would be winning 9 games if they win a bowl game? Come on. You would have. My goodness, really? Good for you. I never would have thought that. Then again, in college football, you never know. And like Craig mentioned, some of the games that got away from them, especially the Colorado game, which is just one that was a kick in you-know-what, the way that thing ended. Here's Dave Aranda. This is about 35 or 40 seconds when he was asked about the turnaround. He's discussed this before, but this was during a media group this weekend or over the weekend, getting ready for the game that is tomorrow, 2:30 in Houston at NRG Stadium against LSU, about what created and what happened to get to the turnaround.
You credit this mid-season turnaround that y'all have had in order to win 6 straight?
I think, confidence that was helped with a small win. You get a small win, then you start believing a little bit more. I think to have real strong belief without an evidence is hard to do. I think especially when there's a lot of noise and all this other thing, and so to kind of get a little bit of success and get a real strong belief can allow you to get a bigger success, and that's just continued and built throughout. Got a really strong challenge, though, with this team we're about to play. Just the weapons they have and how explosive they are on offense, and then defense, the negative plays they create, the pressure they put you in. It's going to be a tough matchup for us.
That's Dave Aranda on LSU, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great crowd. I think Baylor's going to be well represented. LSU's going to bring a big chunk of people, too. They will. Anywhere where you can find a way to drink, they'll be there, and no matter when the game will kick off. Not that Baylor fans do that all the time. Craig, this matchup to me, first of all, it's a blue blood name. It's a team with multiple national titles. Yes, they have not been who we have seen before, but to me, this is a great opportunity for them to finish, if they can, and win and move into the offseason at 9-4.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, at one point they were 2-4, and it just seemed like the season was sort of lost. You're wondering where the wins are going to come from, and they get the big blowout win at Tech, and then the ball gets rolling from there, and they got the opportunity to win 7 games in a row, which I don't care who you are. Even the best teams in the sport right now, the very top of the playoff standings, most of them have not won 7 games in a row, save for, in Oregon, for example, or I don't even know what Texas is at this point, but they lost to Georgia, so theirs can't be 7.
No,
so,
yeah.
7-game win streak is a good mark no matter who you are in the country right now, and so therefore they are one of the hottest teams in the entire nation heading into this football game. LSU, meanwhile, it's been a bit of an up-and-down season, but they're still going to have plenty of talent, and I know they got guys that have opted out or they're in the portal or whatever. They're still going to be very talented. They still got a future NFL quarterback that's starting, that's already announced he's coming back next year, so he wants to end on a high note. Brian Kelly needs this win, and that LSU doesn't want to lose down in the city of Houston because they consider that a home away from home in so many ways. So we saw their allotment get sold out despite the fact that there were opt-outs, and it was a disappointing season. They didn't really compete for the SEC the way they thought they probably would, but they're still going to show up in droves tomorrow. They're going to be out there tailgating, and I think the last thing that LSU fans want is to to see the season end on a loss to Baylor, who I'm pretty sure they probably feel is below them because just naturally the natural order of things, a lot of SEC teams probably feel that way. But you know what? That's a great opportunity for Baylor to go in there and get a big win and beat an LSU team that they haven't got to see very often, who does reside in the league with all the bragging rights and all the big talk. You go there and punch them in the mouth and get a big win for yourself and a big win for the Big 12. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, sitting there brewing for tomorrow's game for both sides, but particularly for the Bears.
I'm going to throw Garrett in front of all these angry and frustrated Baylor fans that LSU gets a lot of attention, an LSU fan. But really, you've been very open and transparent about this LSU team, really even from the beginning of the year when they lost to USC.
No, I have. I mean, from an LSU fan perspective, this season has been a disappointment. You come into the season with expectations of competing in the college football playoff and trying to play for a national championship. You brought back a litany of talent, and you just, for whatever reason, you kept getting in your own way. And you found yourself in this position where you also lost Harold Perkins, you lost Garrett Dellinger, your offensive lineman against A&M. And really, I'm going to keep harping on that. When you go back to the A&M game and Garrett Dellinger goes out, the offense has not been the same whatsoever since that moment. Now, as far as going into this game, yeah, LSU's going to be without pretty much their offensive line. But I don't want to hear any excuses for that. They're also going to be without a lot of people in the secondary. But at the same time, you have a lot of freshmen coming in there, including Javion Trevino from Arlington Martin, the Texas kid, who are hungry. They will have something to prove. You also had the benefit of having some upperclassmen elect that they're going to come back when Garrett Nussmeier said he was going to come back. You have all of your linebackers are going to be available for you. Whit Weeks, you're going to have Greg Penn. You have Braden Swinson, who's going to be available. So the defense is going to be there. You still have to account for Caden Durham on the running back if you're from offense's perspective.
Duncanville High School stuff.
Yeah,
yep. But
you're not going to have Kyron Lacey. Your main receiver elected to go to the draft, so you're going to have to rely on Thomas. You're going to have to rely on Anderson to step up. And as far as your tight ends, that's an area where they've been able to rotate and cause some separation. They don't have that luxury anymore because the only tight end left on their roster that's playing is Trey'Dez Green, who's a freshman. He's really good. But I like Baylor in this matchup. I really do.
Yeah, and again, a lot of teams have more in the portal or out than others, including opt-outs just because they might be in the NFL here pretty soon. Longest current winning streaks, FBS. Oregon 13, they haven't lost. Notre Dame 11. Haven't lost since that stunning loss to Northern Illinois at home. Boise State 11, and then South Carolina, Arizona State, and Baylor at 6 straight. There's Miami of Ohio and Marshall. Ohio, and Marshall have won 7 straight as well. So there's that list. Out the 3 in the double digits, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Boise State, and then Arizona State, Baylor, and also South Carolina, who's red hot. All right, now, let's do this Arizona State-Texas game. We're going to hear from Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio. Tune in. He'll join us at 3:40. Tim Brando at 4:30. J.J. Joe on Baylor and his thoughts about the game on Tuesday. He'll join us today at 4. Phil Bennett just after 5 o'clock. And Mike Scarborough, who covers LSU for TigerBait.com, will join us today at 5:30. Thanks to all of you who are listening on Sikkim 365 app. Thanks to all of you who are on the YouTube channel, 365 Sports, and on Twitter at 365 Sports YT. And as I mentioned, those who are here at the Hilton Post Oak in Houston. Arizona State, Texas. My biggest take of everything. How could Arizona State run the football? That's what they do. They also have Levitt, who's been very effective, but nobody's really run the football against Texas, and this, to me, is like 2 Rams colliding, UT's defense and what Arizona State wants to do, has done, and tries to will upon you with Cam Scatterboom.
Yeah, I mean, based on the reactions that I've seen to this game ever since Texas won their first rounder, I don't think anybody's really given Arizona State much of a chance. I think I can totally understand that based on what you just said, that the fact that the strength of that team is Cam Scatterboom running the football, and the thing that Texas does exceptionally well is stop the run. So I'm, like many others out there, wondering what's going to give if Arizona State's going to win this football game. I think it's going to be that Cam Scatterboom could very well run a lot better than we anticipate, but I think it's going to be more of Sam Levitt throws it around and makes some plays himself and opens things up to allow Cam Scatterboom to maybe take some of the heat off. But matchup-wise, no, I don't love love this for Arizona State from an offense versus defense standpoint. And there's a lot of weapons to account for when it comes to UT's offense, although Quinn Ewers can, on occasion, give you a little gimme here or there, and kind of depends on how locked in, I guess you could say, he is, or how clean of a game he's playing in. But, I think it's going to be a tough test for Arizona State. I'm not picking them. I'm picking Texas, but there's just something about this, and I'm like, well, I mean, never say never. I just feel like I've seen so many people completely write them off, so many Texas fans who are like, this is going to be another example of why you teams don't belong here in this playoff. And I don't know. I think Arizona State's going to put up a little bit more of a fight. Maybe I'm totally wrong in that regard, but I know they're going to play hard. That's one thing for sure. That's what they've done all year, and they're going to leave some bruises wherever they go, no matter if they end up with the winning score or not. So I think Texas is going to have a fight on their hands, but I just think they've got way too much talent for Arizona State to kind of absorb and overcome.
Tyson's not playing the wide receiver. It looks like Isaiah Bond is going to be just fine, and he'll be available Wednesday, the young man that came to Texas from Alabama. I just don't know about the weapons, enough of them, no matter what Arizona State's done. I just don't know, are they really going to be able to establish any kind of a run game, or will they come out and trying to toss it around a little bit to open up that a little bit with what Texas does on defense? It's going to be fun. By the way, the teams that lost, Tennessee, blown out by Ohio State. SMU, man, they turned it over so many times early against Penn State. Indiana was just never in the game, of course, on the road in that game against Notre Dame. And then of Clemson, Texas. It got a little interesting in that third quarter, but then Texas just kind of blew the doors off and ended up separating. So none of those games were all that competitive in the opening round, and some were just bad. But then everyone wants to compare who was bad or what conference they're from. None of them were all that competitive. Clemson was at least interesting for a while on the road at Austin. Guess what? The 4 teams that won, they're at home. They're all at home. Some weather conditions different than others. 4 teams at home. That's why you play to get that first round bye if you don't win a conference championship and get a top 4 seed.
Yeah, I think Clemson, if that pick 6 would have counted, that might have been a bit more of an interesting game. When that got wiped off the board, I think that really hurt them. But had that not occurred, I think that maybe you're looking at a different end result there, but it did get called back, and the rest of the game went the way that it did. But I commend Clemson for at least putting up a fight. I mean, they could have very easily tucked tail and just gotten completely, kicked out of Austin, but instead they put up a fight and they, made it interesting, just not interesting enough for most viewers out there. And thank God Tennessee got beat the way that they did, or else we would be hearing nothing over the last few days about anything other than the fact that the SEC deserves 8 teams in the playoff, or the Big Ten deserves this many teams. Thankfully, Ohio State took care of Tennessee, so that at the end of the day, it wasn't them, sitting there popping off. It was them going, oh, well, wait a second, what just happened to Tennessee, and having to try to answer for that and going, oh, well, and then the backpedaling that commenced was just very funny. So thank you, Buckeyes, for that win over Tennessee, because otherwise I do think the overall conversation is similar to what it is right now about there needing to be changes already to the playoff, but it very much would lean towards we need 8 SEC teams or whatever. But with Tennessee getting beat, that at least cooled some of that off. And I think when it comes to all the other complaints and whatever, it's the first year, guys. Can we let this thing just be what it is?
Nope.
And then decide hey, you know what? Maybe we should change the seeding. I remember we had a message a few weeks ago about what do y'all think about reseeding after the opening round, and I didn't have much thoughts on it, but I just thought, no, not. Let's just see how this goes. But you know what? I'm open to it now, and you can change that in the off season. But that was not what you wanted out of the first round, and I think that's just going to be, with an expanded playoff, kind of the way that it is. Of there's some really, really good teams, and then you place them at home in some cases, and they're probably going to blow out some teams on occasion. That's just the way it's going to be. You're not going to have 1 versus 2 type matchups in every single game of every single round. So I don't know what people's expectations were. I guess they figured every game was supposed to be down to the wire, buzzer beater at the end, and I just never thought that way. I thought there would be some blowouts. I thought that was just going to be naturally a part of this, and I thought that everybody would at least go hey, this is the first year. There are definitely going to be some changes needed, but people just lost their ever-loving minds around the first round of the playoffs. So the games definitely could have been better, should have been better, but for everybody out there who's not an SEC fan, that Tennessee loss was a thing of beauty because otherwise the narrative is much different.
Look at the scores in the NFL playoffs. They have division champions. Some get a bye, some don't. Some teams don't play in the first round, and there are blowouts there. Look at the history of the four teams. From the BCS turning into the 14 playoff. Blowouts during the BCS, blowouts during the playoffs. You hate to see it. You'd like to see more competitive games. Maybe we'll start getting that tomorrow night with that first game. And then, of course, the 3 games, the triple header that is on Wednesday with the college football playoff. A couple other notes to get to. I thought this was interesting. West Virginia with Rich Rodriguez, their new head coach. They have taken Zach Alley, who was the defensive coordinator for a year under Venables at Oklahoma. That's a big-time win and a coaching change from Rodriguez going back to a guy that was with him at Jacksonville State and OU now looking for both coordinators during the offseason.
Yeah, it's great news for Brent Venables. No more bad news for him, and it just seems to be a pile that's growing larger and larger by the day. A lot of people already planning for who the next guy will be. Venables is clearly going to get at least another year to see what he can make of this team, but awfully disappointing bowl loss and a way to finish the season, a game that you thought you'd at least be able to win at the end and, go into the offseason with a little bit of something, but instead you fall to the armed forces, you fall to Navy, and they get you and bite you there right at the end with your decision to try and win that bad boy rather than send it to overtime. And, I wonder what Brent Venables thinks about that decision. Hindsight's 20/20. And I thought it was kind of a poor decision at the time. At least go like one round into OT before you decide you're just going to go for the gold. But he made the decision that he did, and that was one thing. But then to turn around and lose your DC there and Zach Alley was just another blow here in the last few days. So it's been a grumpy Christmas, I think, for a lot of Sooners fans. Maybe recruiting can help, ease those pains a little bit. But, yeah, they're a program right now that's just kind of taking blows and is failing to land many of their own. And that bowl game was just another, blemish. And then watching Texas doing what they're doing, that's not helping matters either.
There was a couple of things.
I should say, that's a great hire for West Virginia.
No, yeah.
That's a really good get. I mean, obviously there's a connection there, so it wasn't like he was out of the blue. But, yeah, to go and take Zach Alley from OU, even with the history with Rich Rod, is still a big deal. And so, yeah, that's a good hire.
All right, we want to get to our guest, Ari Temkin, here in just a moment. There was discussion today, if you look at some of the national writers about, and like Craig said, can we let this finish up first? Can we get through at least the first round? We got through the first game of the first round and people were barking. But even before that, they were barking about who made it, who didn't. Not everyone's going to be happy. But there was discussion about how they might in the future. Now, I don't know if they can get that done in time for 2025 because everybody has to be on board with this. And I don't know why some would be, that there won't be automatic buys or top 4 seeds for conference champions. We know where that's coming from. And at the end, if it makes the tournament or the bracket or whatever better, I'm all for it. But there is discussion about the possibility of conference champions not getting an automatic or 4, getting 1 through 4 in the seedings. And I started thinking about this and I saw someone's reaction to that. Everybody that's 1 through 4, whether you like them or not, whether you think they should be there or not, guess what they all did? They played an extra game. Well, everybody else sat around on their you-know-what and didn't play. So maybe the first-round bye is not just because of where they are, who they are, how good they are, but also the fact by playing in a conference championship game, they played an extra game, and now you want some that don't to get seated ahead of them? It's going to be a discussion that's going to be fun to watch, although I'm kind of tired of it already because we haven't even finished or gotten in to the quarterfinal round. All right, when we come back, Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn is here. I just put up a note, a picture on Twitter for those who are here today, who are here watching us today, and we appreciate you. It's Monday, December 30th. Tomorrow we'll have a pregame show from here, 9 to 10. We will be covering Baylor LSU, so no show. Wednesday, watch college football and eat it up with all the 3 of the 4 quarterfinal round games, and then we'll be back on full throttle on Thursday and Friday. Garrett Ross, I'm David Smoak and Craig Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. Man, what Mike Mosel's done at the Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium off I-35 is just phenomenal. Of course, they just celebrated their 10th anniversary, and they're going to do something like that even more as we get into 2025. But how about this? January 18th, an exclusive culinary experience featuring Executive Chef Lee in a live cooking demonstration. Watch as he creates fresh, innovative dishes to inspire your palate for 2025. Start the new year with great food and even better company and the amenities. And what a classy experience it is at the Baylor Club. Tell them you're a part of 365 Sports' viewing audience or SicEm365.com, and they will also give you a discount towards your membership and even take off a month or two of your dues. 2025, and make sure you're a part of what the Baylor Club has to offer inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in Waco.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Live from the Hilton Post Oak for the Texas Bowl, this is 365 Sports. Our Kinder's Texas Bowl coverage is brought to you by Camille Johnson Realtors, Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, IdealMRI.com, Marco's Pizza.
We are back at the Hilton Post Oak in the Galleria. Tomorrow, Baylor and LSU at 2:30. And we're here tonight until 6 o'clock. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Craig is here. I'm here. Garrett's here. Paul Catalina will be back with us on Thursday. We'll have full shows on Thursday and Friday, and now also know by then who will be a part of the semifinal round. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn, joins us. I was with Ari earlier today talking about the games, Baylor, LSU, and others. Ari, thank you very much. Craig and I here with you, and Garrett. What are the chances? Where do you put Arizona State, and would you bet against them after all of what they've proven they've done after no one believed they could?
Well, it's great to join you guys, and super excited for the Texas Bowl tomorrow. I think it's going to be a really good one. But yeah, I mean, look, I think, the line was initially, I think, at 13.5 points, down to about 12, I think now. So, savvy gamblers are jumping on Arizona State at this point. They're 11-2 against the spread this season, which I think says a lot more about how they're viewed more than anything else. I think Vegas has kind of been wrong on them, and they've been adjusting all year. Do I think Arizona State wins this game? No, I'd be very surprised if they did. But I definitely think it'll be a lot closer than 2 scores. I mean, I easy to take Arizona State plus 12 right now. I mean, they have proven people wrong all year. I think it should be a close game. But ultimately, without much history to go off of in terms of the college football playoff being 12 teams, we get 20 years down the road, and there's a bunch of evidence that suggests there's opportunities for upsets in this round, and maybe it's a little bit different. But at this point, college football has kind of always been chalk. That's why I expect Texas to win this game.
Ari, what are your thoughts on the playoff? I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. We were commenting on the fact we were gone while everybody was complaining about it over the past week. And hey, it's the first year. There's going to be some tweaks needed. I think there's pretty obviously some tweaks that will be needed this offseason if at all possible. But as a first-time observer yourself, what have you made of what we've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing. I mean, certainly we haven't seen a ton of competitive playoff games, whether that be in, the BCS model, whether that be in the CFP model, the 2-team or the 4-team. So it's not much of a departure other than it was just more games that ended up being blowouts. It's probably most disappointed, by that final game, which I thought would be the closest one of the weekend. And, that one wasn't very close either. So, what I do think will happen this offseason is there will be discussion about those automatic bids. While I think the 4 highest ranked conference champs will get automatic bids, still I do not think that they'll be the 4 highest ranked seeds. I think that will end up going to the top 4 teams that are ranked. Although for that to be in the case next season, it needs unanimous approval from all of the conferences. It's just next year will be the last year that's needed for unanimity. So that I think that could be tough. But I think that would give us probably more competitive games, because instead of having matchups, I mean, it would affect all of these matchups, starting with those, first weekend matchups, which probably would have been closer games featuring teams that were probably closer in where they should have been. So, yeah, my takeaway was probably the same as most other people, which is it was a very disappointing weekend. I expect there to be a little bit closer games. There wasn't. And does it mean that, SMU probably should have been in? Does it mean that some of the other teams probably should have been in? You can make the case for it. I think BYU probably enhanced its standing in terms of how, winning 11 games, beating Colorado, only losing to Kansas and to Arizona State. So it's not a bad resume. And, it probably only further solidifies that BYU got a bad draw here and further solidifies the Big 12 got a bad draw overall.
Yeah, the loss to Kansas by BYU is the one that came back to knock them out. But they really weren't really in it anyway. Even before that, it just seemed like they were kind of floating around like some planet in orbit. And there's someone. Who is it? One of the things I thought that from the beginning with the Indiana-Notre Dame game, which was great because it was snowing and it snowed all day, but people forget, I guess, or have a very bad memory that a lot of the college football playoff games, even when it went to 4, have been blowouts. A lot of the BCS games, blowouts. It's not like even before then, blowouts. Is it like everyone thinks because they're doing it this way that it should be 27-24 every game?
Right. No, I mean, yes. I think that is the expectation people had. And I think to your point, Smokey, I think a lot of people forgot that or have forgotten that, like, that's not unique. That really the unique aspect of, the BCS or the CFP or this installation would be close games because it's been the opposite. I mean, it's been a top-heavy sport, and maybe we thought things might be a little bit different this year because depth is put into question because – teams don't have as much depth. They're losing players to the portal that seem to have an impact across the sport, to have better players, strewn out across the sport, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, I do think that there was an expectation that these games would be closer. And again, we'll see over time. Like, you can always look at like the NFL and, and throughout its history, it's like, well, there's never upsets. So like the 1 seed never gets through in 10 years or, whatever it was, there's these different trends that play out. They can kind of go on history to say, hey, these things don't happen as much. If we get 10, 20 years down the road, we've got a 12-team playoff or a 16-team playoff, and it's the same deal, then you start to look at it and be like, well, this is kind of the same as it's always been. These other teams have opportunities, but the talent discrepancy, the talent gap is just that much larger. And I still think that that's a large piece of this too. Is that blue chip ratio. Bud Elliott, 24/7 Sports, he has the blue chip ratio, which is if you basically have to have 4 or 5-star recruits that make up the last 4 classes you've had. So 50% of your entire roster has to be 4 or 5-star recruits over the last 4 or 5 recruiting classes you've had. And every team going back to the modern recruiting cycle that's won a national title has had a 50% or greater blue chip ratio on their team. And so, I mean, again, I don't think that is going to change under this new regime, under this new playoff system. But if it does, it'd be great for the sport.
Ari, you kind of mentioned it there, BYU and Colorado. I mean, a few Big 12 teams with some nice wins so far, and certainly that was a big one, a game that I was really looking forward to, but BYU just took it to them, handed it to them, and made them like it.
Yeah, and look, I mean, as good as Deion has been, and when you go from where Colorado was to where they are now, it's obvious the amount of change that he's made. At the same time, like, there's been a few games where you're surprised that he's been as blown as he has been, and that goes back to Jackson State as well. There are a couple of opportunities when I look at those, those undefeated teams that he had at Jackson State that lost in the Celebration Bowl, which is, viewed as that, national championship for the HBCUs. Kind of laid eggs in those games. He obviously laid an egg in this game. It's not the same, but look, both teams were at full strength. It's one of the few bowl games that you look at, and both teams were playing the majority of their players, had the majority of their players available. While on the one hand, Colorado's season, what an impressive season it was, what an impressive debut season in the Big 12, and can't wait to see what Deion's teams look like moving forward. This was just another egg that he laid in a big moment in a big game, and credit BYU. This looked a lot like the games that they had when they were on their winning streak, when they were, three components, 3 phases of the sport all playing together. I mean, punt return for touchdown, they're intercepting passes. I mean, it just looked like it had looked when BYU was playing at its best. So just disappointing, and I think Smokey's right. That KU loss probably doomed them. They probably should have been part of a larger conversation, but they weren't. And that speaks to the status of the Big 12.
Recovered an onside kick, ran back a punt, as you mentioned, blocked, I think. When they recovered the onside kick, there was a shot of Deion. And it looked like he was shell-shocked because obviously BYU came out and bloodied them pretty quickly. But it was a team in BYU that was just so focused. And you could tell they were probably pretty angry about the fact they were never a part of it. The KU loss was not good. But it was a team. Deion looked like he was, that look when you're in trouble and you don't know if everyone's looking at you, but you're in trouble. He knew his team was in deep trouble early in that game I even think the time when they recovered the onside kick.
No, I completely agree. And look, he was very emotional before the game.
Yep.
He visited with an sideline interview, and you could tell he was very emotional. You wonder if the emotions got the best of him in terms of just game planning and being ready. Because, you said it. BYU seemed prepared. They were ready. And then there's the whole dynamic of all of the talk around the team in the game, where it was obvious that Dave Pasch and the ESPN crew were very, overly discussing Colorado to the point of not discussing much about BYU, despite there being great BYU storylines that have been well documented all season. I mean, they even got to the part with Connor Pay basically saying to them in their production meetings, hey, make sure to mention us too. And Dave Pasch, in retelling that story, was like, I'm sure the folks in Provo would love us to spend the entire game talking about BYU, which just seems so condescending considering like they had literally spent the entire game talking about Colorado, at which point Dusty Dvorak basically jumped in and was like, yeah, like we should be talking more about BYU. I thought Dusty handled it a lot better than Dave Pasch did. So that was just a weird dynamic too in terms of like the overall discussion for the game. And even the headlines coming out of the game. Like, it's great that the Big 12 has Colorado to garner such, big headlines, but it was, to the detriment of the league to celebrate BYU getting 11 wins. I mean, talk about a league having 2 teams with 11 wins. That's impressive. That's a very impressive season for the Big 12.
Well, one of those teams, Iowa State, 42-41 over Miami just a couple of days ago. And clearly the big story coming out of that one, or the big discussion piece, was about Cam Ward sitting out the second half. But what a big win, 11 wins, first time ever for that program. And Matt Campbell, and just your thoughts on Iowa State, not finishing with the Big 12 title like they hoped for a few weeks ago, but still finishing strong nonetheless.
Yeah, and finishing strong despite, laying an egg in the Big 12 championship game. Yeah, I'm really excited to see this team next year. They should definitely be one of the favorites of the Big 12. Rocco Beck is an absolute stud. He makes mistakes, there's no doubt about it, but he's got a short memory. He's got some of the things you really look for in a quarterback. And obviously, his ability to lead his team down the field, in critical moments is key, because we've seen it now multiple times, and including in this game. Obviously the Cam Ward piece is part of it. If he plays in the second half, does this game come down to the final drive? I'm not so sure about that. I get the folks that were upset about Cam Ward. I also get the Cam Ward side of it. It doesn't look great because he played enough to break the record, but then did it in the first half and then set up the entire second half. It looked very selfish. Look, it was selfish. It doesn't look selfish. It is selfish. It's sort of the definition of selfish, right? Playing a game that is the epitome of selflessness and saying, I'm going to only play so long as I can set the all-time record for touchdown passes. And then as soon as I've done that, I'm going to start the rest of the game. I mean, we can call it whatever we want and say it's, it makes sense for him to do it, but it's selfish. That's what it is. And so he made the selfish decision to do that. And he's got to live with the consequences of it. I don't think that it will hurt his draft status. I think teams are going to look simply at how good of a player you are. And then if there's 4 or 5 knocks on you, then, then suddenly it might become a bigger knock for an NFL team on your draft board. The one thing I will say, though, is if you put up 2 really good halves and win a game against a really good and credible Iowa State defense, does that help his draft status? Does that push him potentially above a Shedeur Sanders or a Carson Beck? That, to me, is the bigger thing, is did he actually hurt himself, not because he sat out and the selfishness of that, because I think that's overplayed in terms of NFL evaluations, but did he hurt himself in terms of just the evaluation of the entire football game? Because it's not as cut and dried as I think people would believe it is in terms of how the quarterback will shake out in this upcoming draft. And I do think that Beck is closer to one as well, because I think that offense that Georgia runs with Mike Bobo was really hampering him. It's not like what we saw with Todd Monken at Georgia. So I think once we see the tests and the combine, that Carson Beck's going to shoot up draft boards.
By the way, 11 win teams, 3 in the Big 12. Iowa State, Arizona State, and also BYU. Ari, we appreciate you, all of what you do. Great to have you on. It's great to be with you this morning, too, on Big 12 Radio on TuneIn. And hopefully we can maybe, it all depends if Arizona State can maybe shock the world, if that's the right term. Be talking about them next week, but they have their work cut out for them, no doubt.
No doubt about it. And I know there's a lot of folks in Waco that and throughout this state that would love to see Arizona State knock off Texas. And look, the reality is, guys, we all know a lot of Texas fans. They've all been holding out all year, saving their money for that Cotton Bowl. They didn't go to the A&M game. They didn't go to the Clemson playoff game. They're not going to the Peach Bowl. They're all holding out, knowing that they're going to get to that semifinal in the Cotton Bowl. So it'd be great for them not to get there. Take care, guys.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn. Iowa, a 24-14, late third now, leading Missouri in the Music City Bowl, brought to you by TransPerfect. When we come back, we're going to hear from J.J. Joe, former Baylor quarterback, and Baylor Radio. 11 win teams, 3 of them. We got, and who knows if Arizona State adds to that number. They might possibly do that, too. There was one note. Harold Perkins is coming back, Garrett. That was because we brought that up.
Correct.
He's coming back. Were you surprised by that decision?
Not really. I think that
LSU edge defensive, whatever he calls it, position.
I think when he was healthy or when he was playing, he didn't necessarily live up to the expectations. That he left a lot desired out there. And then with the injury unfolding the way it did, I think it's only natural for him to understand, kind of look at your draft situation and know that you can come back and put kind of cap off with a season that reflects the expectations of what you were brought in to do. I think having him back with Whit Weeks and them is going to be interesting. It's good for LSU. You could build around it. So, yeah, it's going to be nice to have him back in the mix next year in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, he really has digressed. This year a little bit better.
And last
2 years ago,
yeah,
it just seemed like he disappeared, and the thought, and he was hurt, but it was almost as if, do they know where to play him? Do they know what's best for them, where they should play Harold Perkins? That's been a debate with Brian Kelly and the staff, too. When we come back, we'll hear from J.J. Joe, Tim Brando at 4:30 today, Phil Bennett today, and also Mike Scarborough. We'll ask him about the Harold Perkins decision. He covers LSU for Tiger Bait. This is 365 Sports. I remember when I first got a call about Texas Beef House, a big, huge ranch right outside of Tyler. The Duvall family, Angus cattle. I've been there. I've visited there. I've watched what they've done. Gorgeous farm-raised Angus cattle. They're going to have the next online auction, by the way, January the 9th. It's an online auction. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com. Create your own account. There's BidOnBeef.com, which is what they've used now for the last several months with online and live auctions. Some of you are viewers and listeners who have bought beef from them. Online auctions. Now they offer it to you with these online auctions. January the 9th is the next one. And you get to pay what you want to pay. Yeah, you can go to the grocery store, and there might be 5 or 6 different packages of ribeye steaks, and you could pick and choose the size of the marbling or whatever. With TexasBeefHouse.com and the online auctions, you get to go online and pick what you want, pay what you want. If it's a little bit too much, you walk away. If it's what you want, you keep on staying involved in the auction, and you will have the best when it comes to Angus and Wagyu steaks. Beef. The Duvall family. It's TexasBeefHouse.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott will invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533. Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI, ask your doctor for an Ideal MRI. Visit us at idealmri.com or call us at 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you. Red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Live from the Hilton Post Oak for the Texas Bowl, this is 365 Sports. Our Kinder's Texas Bowl coverage is brought to you by the Baylor Club, Pioneer Steel and Pipe, Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac, Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine, GXG Baylor's NIL Collective.
All right, we're back at the Hilton Post Oak. We appreciate it. Inside the area that is beautiful, the Galleria in Houston. Tomorrow we'll be at NRG Stadium for the game between Baylor and LSU, 2:30 the kickoff at NRG. And we'll have our pregame tomorrow morning from here in the location inside the Hilton Post Oak from 9 until 10. J.J. Joe, Baylor radio color analyst, former Baylor quarterback, who has also been able to maybe decompress a little bit. Did you get a break at all, J.J.? Are you still working last week throughout most of the days?
Hey, well, the good news is, Smoak, we had a pretty big run up at the office right up until like Christmas, and then we were able to chill a little bit. So it's been good.
Good. I know you're in Houston, and of course tomorrow the game. What is this? The matchup? What would a win against LSU, in your opinion, mean to Baylor, other than the obvious of a 7-game winning streak to close out the year?
Yeah, I think it means a lot. Before I get to the conference stuff, I just think for the team to finish the season 9-4 after starting 2-4, and continuing to build. Everything's been positive. Recruiting has been positive. Transfer portal news is positive. Some good news today as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you just want to close it right, Smoak. You want to close the season out and then use that as additional fuel going into the offseason, knowing that, hey, man, we're probably a quarter or maybe a couple of different plays from, being in the Big 12 championship game. So I think it means a lot to close out with the dub.
JJ, do you have a favorite maybe storyline or position or just something that's really been a bright spot that you've enjoyed this year that stands out to you?
Well, I think for everybody, of course, I'm a quarterback, so the Sawyer finally getting his run, right? He played quite a bit last year, probably still had some gaps in his game, especially throwing the ball. Came into this season, had Finn in front of him, and he just kind of bided his time. And when he got the opportunity, took advantage of. I love that storyline. But, I'll tell you, I think the storyline for me is really the coaching staff. You got to give players some kudos as well because they had to go out and execute. But Aranda sticking to his guns and turning this ship after 2-4, to me, and coming out of that off week when I thought they were dead to rights. I thought we were done. I think that's the story. Whatever he did leading up to that and during that off week, and that coaching staff to keep this squad together, man, it says a lot about them, and it says a lot about the players for getting to the other side.
I thought, and I don't remember the exact score, but BYU was up 21-0 and 28-7. And I wondered at that point and I don't want to use the word quit because that's a harsh word. I don't want anyone telling me that. But I thought they're dead. Like you said, they came back and made that competitive. But, boy, I thought it was over right there. I just wondered if Aranda would coach another couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you, Smoak. We we lost to Colorado, I think, the week before in that last second play and then overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Came back to McLean, and then we were looking, like you said, we were looking dead. But I was encouraged because really, if you think about it, Coach Aranda teams, I've never thought, even when we were 3-9, that they laid down on it. I always felt like the players played for him. But I just felt like, that BYU game was a bad one. And then even the next week, I think that's when we went to Iowa State. I just thought, man, it was going to be too much and we weren't going to be able to come back. But they did look dead for a minute there, especially at the BYU game in the first quarter.
JJ, it's a bowl game, so who the heck really knows, honestly, and there's opt-outs and NFL declarations and things like that. But when you look at LSU and what you do know about them and what you do expect to see tomorrow, what do you expect and what stands out to you?
Well, we had Coach Aranda at the little it wasn't a coaching show. Actually, it was kind of the pre-bowl preview. Really the one thing that concerns me, they're going to have talent no matter how many opt-outs. LSU, SEC teams are going to bring athletes. But to me, it's really, Nussmeier. And even though he's going to be missing Kyron Lacey, and I think he's missing one more, I'm not sure if C.J. Daniels is going to play. But, he still has Aaron Anderson in the slot, Chris Hilton, the deep threat guy. They're going to pop in a couple guys we probably haven't heard, and they're going to have guys who can play the ball in the air. He's a quick read, quick study, quick processor who's going to know what you're in. And I think that's my concern. We've struggled with the ball in the air all year long. We struggled really covering. And this is the kind of team, Brian Kelly is the coach, man. They can score fast and score often, and you just got to find a way to slow them down.
Normally, a school like LSU, and I remember asking Aranda this even when they were going that 12-2 year, middle of that when you could tell they were really, really good. And I asked him about the difference between what he has seen in the Big 12 compared to the guys along the defensive front from when he was at LSU. And he mentioned it was different. It was huge different.
Oh, yeah.
That in the Big 12, you better have a great staff to scheme because you're not going to have some of those animals that play on the defensive line. Do you see that with this LSU team this year?
The funny thing is I didn't. And that's the first thing I looked at. And Smoak, really, if you remember, when we played Georgia in 19, we played them in 19 in the Sugar Bowl, and they had 13 opt-outs, I think. I mean, they had a lot of dudes in play. But, dude, they were different. You could tell from the jump that, hey, we were lucky for 21-7 with 13 opt-outs, right? And we had a pretty good, solid team that year, especially defensively. So, and then we played Ole Miss. I thought Ole Miss, we played them, they were good. They weren't Georgia front type good. And this LSU team, they do have some talent up front, but I just don't see on film, at least the games I've seen, that they seemingly are the prior LSU teams where they would bring, what Alabama or what Georgia has up front. They have solid guys. They have guys who can make plays. They got edge guys to come get you. But the difference seems to be, and Smoak, this is just kind of watching video, to me that they lack those guys in the interior. So they bring a lot of pressure and all this kind of stuff to create some disruptive plays.
JJ, what have you thought about just the December that this team has had, not only finishing strong, but the recruiting, the new quarterback commit through the portal? I don't know how much you can actually talk about or not, but just kind of learning lessons from a couple of years ago when they won that Big 12 title and just sort of sat on their hands. They are not doing that this time around, it appears.
No, man, I'm glad. Hey, you learn, right? I mean, that's the one thing about when you go through a rough time, and you say, man, we should have, would have, could have. But Baylor is doing it. I'm so happy because we seem to pivot and adjust it to this new reality. And I like to see the high school recruiting piece mixed in. That's what I really like about what Coach Aranda is doing. He's still going after high schoolers. He's not advocating high schoolers, and he's also then filling in needs where he needs to. So I like the mix, and I think really the missing puzzle, my man, is just going ahead and beating the LSU team, because I believe that does launch you in the offseason where you feel like, okay, I don't care how many opt-outs have. We beat LSU, a brand name SEC, and next year we ought to be in the conference championship. And that's what you want. You want that in the winter to launch into spring and then all into the summer and into the fall season.
With Sawyer back for another year, and what they did get, as Craig mentioned, a commitment from somebody that's at a Power 4 conference. Among what they have that they brought in with commitments at high school, this kind of, in my opinion, is it as deep they've been at the quarterback position since maybe Briles' last year?
Yeah, I mean, with the young man, was it White, I think, that's coming, with him coming, I have not seen the young man. I know he was a high recruit, just like Sawyer was. So it really speaks a testament to him because he knows he's not going to start next year. But, you could tell he's really involved and really aware of the development that this Jake Spavital brings. So I would say, Smoak, you have to think, I would say that would be a good assessment that since we had, we were sitting on RG3, RG3, Nick Lawrence, Bryce, and Seth and for a period there. And then we had Bryce and Steph, and then we had Stidham come. So I think maybe that Bryce was Stidham there. I don't think Stidham may not have been.
No, he eventually was there when Seth Russell was a part of that, and Chris Johnson, I think too. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So I would say, Smoak, you're right. Your head's on. I mean, this is probably with him coming in the best group we've had since Briles' squad was here.
Do you think bowl games matter as much as they used to?
You know what? That's funny. I think the CFP, of course, is going to take, everything. But we've had BCS since 2000, where like the top 4 or 2, whatever teams are playing. Now it's a little bit bigger. Right now it's like a 2 or 3 weeks. But I do think for the teams involved and for the coaches and the programs that the bowl games do matter, because number one, it gives you additional practice time. Never get away from the fact that you get 15, 16 extra practices for the guys who don't play a lot. That's huge. It also helps you with recruiting. I think teams know that you're playing in the bowl game. They get to see the guys. They get to go to the bowl game. Now I see guys practicing with teams. And then I think beyond that, it can be a launch. I don't care what anybody says. Like that last game can either help you or hurt you a little bit going into off season. And if you can beat a nice team like LSU going into the off season with all they have coming back, man, that could be a special kind of launch. Like in 2012, we beat the snot out of a UCLA team to launch into the 13th season. Those guys felt they just kind of carried that whole momentum into the 2013 season and that confidence, and that's what you want to see continue. So I think they do mean a lot.
I think that's also when maybe nationally that people started to realize how physical Baylor's offense was, and not just the glitz and glamour or the deep fades or the passing the ball, that they realized when they beat UCLA and threw only 13 passes and made them like absolutely like it. I think that was one of the first glimpses around the country that people realized this was a pretty physical offense and not just wide open.
Yeah, I do. I agree with that. Now, the team we have now, we run the ball different, but we do come off. I mean, Bryson Washington, he's freshman All-American.
Mm-hmm.
You have Dawson as well. They show how physical he is. And then Sawyer. I think Sawyer should be a guy that's up for pretty much every award next year. And I think the only thing missing, and I think that helps with players coming here, Smoak. I think the fact that we have guys from SEC schools, Big Ten schools now looking at Baylor, because I think they see it. They say these guys have won in a not too distant past, in 21 and 19, and now they're winning again. I like their coaching staff, and coach has shown a way to get guys to the league. I think Baylor, all we have to do is quit stubbing our toe, and we'll be fine.
If only they could have done what they're doing now, and this isn't a what if, but if they would have used the momentum of 2021 the way they are recruiting this year and the portal, because Aranda wanted to give the younger players a chance to next man up, and it didn't work. Boy, it just seemed like that offseason, if you could go back and look at it again, you wonder, and maybe one day I'll get to ask him this, would he have done it differently?
I think 100% he would have done it different, because you got to think, what we've done the last 2 years is the polar opposite of what we did after the 21 season. We may have had two transfers. I think maybe that we may have had two transfers with all of our receivers leaving and both of our stud running backs leaving.
Yep.
There's no way I think the Aranda today would have done that again. So, but he learned. That's what I love about Coach Aranda. He learned. It may have come from a place of, hey, I got to do this because my job's on the line. But he learned. He's pivoted and said, this is the new reality. And now Baylor's going full bore ahead, and I like to see it.
See you tomorrow.
All right, my man.
Thank you, J.J. Joe, Baylor radio color analyst, and, of course, played at Baylor at the quarterback position with us on 365 Sports. You ever thought about, I'm not one that looks back too often. What is it? Whatever was happened, but they could have just capitalized at all in any particular way on 2021, because that's when the portal really started, and they were coming off a number 5 ranking and a 12-2 team.
Yeah, but I think that's been pretty well documented. I think he's spoken to that a few times and acknowledged that they made mistakes. So I think that's just something that is in the past and is going to stay there, and there's nothing you can do about it now but just change and not make that same mistake again. And so here they are in a similar situation, although not riding quite as high.
Mm-hmm.
But they've already got, closing in on, I think, double-digit commits in the transfer portal with another one today. So I think they've been pretty quick and expedient compared to a couple years ago, and that lesson was learned. It was learned the hard way, and it maybe even almost cost Dave Aranda his job, but he's learned it now, and they're going to go to war in the portal, and we've seen that already pay some dividends. So I think hindsight's 20/20, but all you can do is learn from it and do it differently, and that's what he's doing so far.
Garrett, I want to keep it here if we can. Tim Brando will join us at 4:30. There's a couple of other notes to get to, some transfer portal, some other news and notes in college football to get to. We're live at the Hilton Post Oak in the Galleria on 365 Sports. Let's go, and just a couple of comments, and Garrett, if you have something to pop in it, please do as well. Paul's back with us on Thursday. We mentioned Walker White from Auburn transferring to Baylor. This was one that looked like it was about to get away from them, and then all of a sudden I just wasn't paying attention. Pop, it happens, and he's headed to Baylor.
Yeah, he's a highly recruited player that Auburn wanted pretty badly during his initial recruitment and landed him, and he had some other really nice suitors, but just didn't work out down there with Hugh Freeze. I think got recruited over or around and just saw the writing on the wall maybe, or just it wasn't as much of a fit as he thought it was going to be. Whatever the reasons that added up to him deciding to look around, Baylor comes calling, and Walker White doesn't take long to decide that's where he's going to end up. And so I think he sees a situation where at Auburn he's probably needing time to develop, and he's not going to be allowed that time without getting passed up basically. But instead, with the decision to go to Baylor, he's looking at it and goes, all right, Sawyer's the guy next year. Like, there's no question about that. Like, I can sit back. I need to be ready. I'll probably be called upon, but, like, I can be the backup quarterback, learn under Jake Spavital, kind of get my wits about me, and then set up and ramp up for, to take over the reins in a couple years. So I think the timing works out great. I think it's a big-time prospect. One of the better guys you could have gotten out of the portal outside of going and getting an actual starting quarterback. Like, in terms of, they got a backup quarterback, and I think in terms of the backup quarterback pecking order, that was a pretty good pickup. So I like their quarterback health a lot more going into next year. Should also save them from having to go splurge on a come-in start guy like they did last year with DeQuan Finn that turned out to be a pretty empty investment because they hardly ever even played him, and he was not healthy at other times. So in this situation, I think it makes a lot more sense for all parties involved, and it's not as much of a wondering how this is going to work out. You know who the guy is, and you know who the next man up is.
I mean, I think this is a testament to Jake Spavital, right? Because if you don't have Spavital and you don't have this offense and you have a guy like Sawyer Robertson who his skill set is similar to what Walker White is going to bring in, there's not much difference there. I mean, there's going to be some differences, but it's not like it's not like a DeQuan Finn to a Sawyer Robertson. It's pretty much the same thing. So I think this is kind of like the tipping point to what Baylor's approach might be going forward. Of course, you want to recruit out of high school, and you've done that with Nate Bennett, and you got the kid from Coppell this year.
Edward Griffin.
Yep. But at the same time, like, I think you've done and you've shown success by being able to bring people in the portal like a Sawyer, have them here, have them develop, and then cut loose in this offense. And I think this is going to be something we see is people are going to want to come play for this offense in Jake Spavital because it's fun, it's wide open, you're putting up big numbers, and I think this is something that is kind of a trend that we're going to see carry forward.
And by the way, Griffin and Bennett aren't going to just sit there and go, okay, they know the competition is there, but next year, barring anything that happens health-wise, that Sawyer Robertson is the alpha when he comes back.
Yeah, I think the conversation is, what's the long-term future of Jake Spavital? But in this game, you can't guarantee anything. So, Walker White clearly had to like some things about Baylor as well, because you don't just make a decision based on a coordinator who could be gone in 6 months or whatever the case may be. But it does look pretty good as far as running it back next year. And so I like the move, and I like it for a lot of different reasons, not just bolstering that depth chart, but preparing for the future and kind of making that a little bit clearer than it was. Whereas going into the offseason without a portal quarterback, what do they do? Now we have the answer. They went and got Walker White, and it sets up really well as if they had a recruit just developed the last couple of years. So, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's a great spot for both parties.
All right, let's get into Haas Haney from TCU, a quarterback that was at Aledo, a phenomenal player in high school. He's headed to Oklahoma State, and, man, can they use that as a lift at the quarterback position.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising. I don't know. I really hadn't thought about it much, I guess. That's why I was surprising, getting away from everything and then just checking in every once in a while on the news cycle. But Haas Haney, a very prolific high school quarterback, was incredibly successful at Aledo, and obviously you trust Kendall Briles and his evaluation of a lot of quarterbacks, so he's going to TCU, and you know what, that's a great offer and a great school, and would have been, good, but I get that there's kind of writing on the wall there as well. And, Josh Hoover's back next year, and so guy clearly wants to play, and who really needs a quarterback right now? Oklahoma State does, so I think that's just a quicker path to playing for Hoss Haney, and for that reason it makes a lot of sense. Don't know. I didn't delve too far into any previous connections and whatnot with him and the staff in Stillwater, so there may be some things there, but Oklahoma State definitely needed to make a splash, definitely needed to add to that room, and I think they went and got a guy who's still very raw in some ways, or green, because he hasn't played a lot at the college level, and just a redshirt freshman, so you've got your guy to start kind of building around if you're Mike Gundy and company. So, yeah, I think that worked out really, really well for them.
I thought this was I did not realize this. Oklahoma football has had an amazing run over as high up the totem pole as anybody, with Alabama and Ohio State among very few others. And we know they're in a position now where they're trying to figure out what's going to go on. I mentioned the defensive coordinator is going to go to West Virginia to be with Rich Rod, who he was with at Jacksonville State. But the loss that they had in the bowl game, Brent Venables, John Blake, Oklahoma coaches with multiple losing seasons since 1925. That's 100 years ago. John Blake, who had a torturous time in the late 90s following Howard Schnellenberger, prior to Bob Stoops, and now Brent Venables.
Yeah, how about shout out to Brian Newberry, the Navy head coach, what they did, and Baylor alum, right? So he goes and gets the job done there at Navy after a couple of stumbles with a really good start, and they kind of stumbled a little bit there in the second half, and then get the big bowl win. But, shout out to Brian Newberry with a little bit of a local connection there. And I don't know what to say about Oklahoma. I kind of said this in the preseason. I was nervous about the move to the SEC. At the same time, it's still Oklahoma. For as much as some other programs want to talk, a lot of programs talk and don't have 7 national titles. Programs want to talk, they don't have more than a handful of Heisman winners, if any. It's still one of the premier top 5. You're pushing it if you're saying top 10, but they are one of the premier programs in the country, but they're in completely uncharted territory. This is NIL world now. This is life in the SEC amidst NIL world, and I don't know that they've got the guy in place to be able to navigate all of that. It looks like, obviously, Brent Venables will get another year, but beyond that, I don't know what the future holds for Oklahoma football, and I think there's a lot of questions about the talent level and just what they have or what they don't have. But yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking times, I think, if you're an OU fan, because how successful they've been, and some of you know how the John Blake years went, and that's really the last kind of dark period. You had Lincoln Riley obviously quitting on you and leaving in the middle of the night, and that was a blow, but it's not like that hurts your team from the standpoint of you can never recover. But you get the wrong coaching hire, and you kind of piddle-paddle there for a couple years, and all of a sudden you look up and you're sitting there swimming at the bottom of the SEC, and that's where they find themselves. And so can they paddle out of that quickly? That's his job is to get them to do that, but I don't have a lot of faith. I'm somebody who was not they're going to go in and dominate. I very much had my doubts, at least for the very beginning of this. We'll see now how they, course correct.
Let's see if he can pull a Dave Aranda and pull it out of the ditch.
That's entirely possible if you go get the right combination of players. For example, going and getting John Mateer, that's a really nice step forward. Getting Ben Arbuckle as your OC, it's a really nice step forward. But for now, it's going to be talk for the next few months until they can go out there and prove it again, because what we saw on the field this year is not going to be a good thing for Brent Venables long term.
By the way, if you're outside of the room, we're in this room, the director's room is what they call it at the Post Oak, the Hilton Post Oak. If you're outside the door and you want to come in and sit down and listen for a little bit, we'd love for you to do that if you want to. Speaking of Brian Newberry, Army and Navy football this year, both were great stories. Navy beat Army to win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy after also beating Air Force. Army won the AAC, won their bowl game, won 12 wins for the first time ever, 12 games. Navy beat a Power 4 Blue Blood in the bowl game, finished with 10 wins. Neither team has a portal. Neither team does NIL. Both have great culture and foundation, and just happened this year to be a really very unique year for both of them. At times, one or the other's been good. This year, both of them were very good. And I just love the way, and yeah, this is part of me. I love the way they play, even though I know the game has changed. But that quarterback from Navy going 95 yards against that team at Oklahoma and being able to run 95, was going to get caught from behind, a little shade tackle, and then Army winning big too. So congratulations to both of them for the years that they had this year in college football. Keith Starr asking where we are. I'm going to see if I can get in touch with him. He's from Tyler and wanted to come drop by the show if possible. South Dakota State's quarterback Mark Gronowski is probably going to end up turning pro. However, he's entering the portal. South Dakota State, one of the better teams in FCS. They had won a couple of national titles in recent years, not this year. He was 49-6 as a starter, 10,000 yards. That's a name to watch. He's an NFL prospect who also is getting into the portal. So that might be the next best available quarterback for teams that still need someone to run their offense. I'll get in this with Tim Brando about Kirk Herbstreit and some of the things that were said after the first games or two in the playoff. We'll get to that. Kevin Concepcion, Craig, North Carolina State, ACC Rookie of the Year in 2023, 1,300 yards, 16 touchdowns, has announced he's committed to play at Texas A&M, and they sure need some weapons.
Yeah, they do. Added Micah Hudson, and no, they're not done. They got plenty more to try and do this offseason. But, yeah, it's a really good pickup for them. Seen a lot of workout videos already with Micah Hudson. But I saw a lot of those before he went to Texas Tech. So, that's what it is. But maybe this time around that'll amount to a little bit more out on the field and a better fit or whatever it is that he needs to pull out that five-star talent. But Concepcion, a proven guy, and along with Hudson and others they've already added, it's pretty clear that Mike Elko's reshaping this team and getting to work and doing what he can through the portal. So I think that's a really nice pickup. And on paper, which is all it is really right now, but on paper, Texas A&M's definitely boosted things around their young quarterback in Marcel Reed, and a tough loss for them the other night, but I think they're going to be much more talented and have a lot more playmakers at his disposal next year. All right, when we come back, Tim Brando, Fox Sports, he was just doing another segment with another media outlet. He will join us. Also, Phil Bennett at 5 o'clock, and then Mike Scarborough, who gives us the insight from LSU's perspective of this game tomorrow, 2:30 at NRG Stadium. This is 365 Sports. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco, which you have a combination of getting fit, staying in shape, taking off of pounds and inches with personal training, including Randall, Christy, Lori, Nathan, and Robin. There's also tennis, an academy-type look. And for the longest time, I would drive by that location. I thought it was a tennis academy, and they've got great pros, and Britt Coleman's been there for a long, long time. Kenna now is heavily involved in what she does. But the courts are spectacular. There's a center court, a stadium court, and all of the tennis courts you need. And then on top of that, a commitment to pickleball, where people are there every morning, bright and early, and throughout the day into the evening. Rachel, the director of pickleball, who came and got involved heavily in October, and the comments and reaction and the reviews have been fantastic. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness with group exercise classes, personal training. You do what you want to do as you want with what they have with free weights, Cybex machines. They have treadmills and so much more. Stairmaster, Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Live from the Hilton Post Oak for the Texas Bowl, this is 365 Sports. Our Kinder's Texas Bowl coverage is brought to you by Camille Johnson Realtors, Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, IdealMRI.com, Marco's Pizza.
365 Sports inside the Hilton Post Oak. Glad to be here. Look forward to tomorrow, 2:30 the kickoff. We'll be here for our pregame tomorrow morning, 9 until 10, here on 365 Sports, and also broadcast on KWTX. So we'll do that. Tim Brando will join us here momentarily on 365 Sports, and you know he'll have quite a bit to say.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. He always does, regardless of the time of year. But, yeah, it just dawned on me during the break, Haas Haney, and I'm sure somebody probably listening was screaming this, but the connection with Oklahoma State, Doug Meacham, his OC, and I didn't put that together when I was talking about it a second ago, but, yeah, that obviously connection there, so I just wanted to add that tidbit on there, and even more reason why that seems like it's going to be a pretty good get for OSU, who I know has a pretty full quarterback room with some options, but he certainly strikes you as the type of guy, especially with that Meacham relationship, who will come in and compete to maybe win that job right away.
24-24 between Iowa and Missouri in that game in Nashville, and there's 8:45 left in the game in the fourth quarter. So the Big 12 bowl games, BYU 36, Colorado 14, Iowa State 42, Miami 41. K-State had to come back, but they did, and beat Rutgers 44-41. TCU mauled Louisiana 34-3. West Virginia Tech losing to Memphis and Arkansas. That Arkansas game, and Tech started well, and then they couldn't stop anybody. 39-26. I thought they played pretty well, but you could tell that they had some people missing. But if we're going to say that about teams that the Big 12 teams beat, you also know that Arkansas had some players out too. That's as you mentioned, the first time in 3 years that Joey's been there that they did not win their bowl game.
It's the first time he's not won a bowl game. He was undefeated as a head coach in bowl games, and the ability to go and hit 9 wins falls short of that, but still had a really nice year at 8-5. I do think that with all of the transfer portal moves and the fact that that's at least right before we left was such a big to-do, and the hype for the offseason and next season was already starting to build up a little bit. I do think falling short really puts more of a impetus on cracking through and getting like 9 wins next year. I think that's really important because 8's cool, but I think you've done that now a couple of times, and previous guys did that too, and the whole point is to get over that hump and go win 9 and more. So I think 9 wins minimum should be what you're looking at next year as far as expectations for Texas Tech. And, that was a tough loss. I thought they'd get that 9-win mark potentially, but Arkansas is a good team who's had a really good year. Taylon Green's a talented player. I mean, he's got some flaws in his game, but he's very talented and is a big-time playmaker, had a huge game through the air, even though he didn't have, the best completion percentage in the world. But did show you why he's dangerous and did give a Tech defense that's, not been good at all this year. I mean, let's face it, that's why Shieldwood's coming in to take over the defense. He gave them, Taylor Green, lots of problems, and, they didn't have an answer for him. But I thought Will Hammond was a great experience for him to play in that game. He played okay, had a couple picks, did not have like the greatest game in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't so much about him going in there and throwing for 304 TDs as it was just him starting the game and playing a full game and just experiencing that. So that experience I think will be valuable. Jacoby Williams, Cameron Dickey, you saw a lot of those young running backs for Tech who we'll see a lot of next year, and they both showed some signs of why they're very excited about having those two coming up the system. So I think there's still plenty of good to take away and get excited for next year. But, yeah, to fall short of 9 wins I think was a bummer. And then to lose to a team like Arkansas where there's a little bit of history and that Southwest, tie-in, that makes it a little bit more personal of a loss, that you were hoping to get that W there. But give credit to Arkansas. They're a good team.
Tim Brando, Fox Sports, joins us on 365 Sports. We're in Houston again for Baylor at LSU tomorrow afternoon at NRG in the Texas Bowl, the Kinder's Texas Bowl. Timmy B, thank you very much for your time. We have so much to get to. I want to get to Greg Gumble at the end of the segment because I know you knew him, worked with him, loved him, as so many others did as well. Let's discuss, first of all, your thoughts about the first round of the college football playoffs. The sky is falling. My God, they've done it wrong. And only focusing in on a couple of the games that were blowouts and not all of the games that were blowouts.
Yeah, I'm really telling everybody that I can talk to today, Smoak. And by the way, Merry Christmas. I hope
you too.
had one, and Happy New Year to everybody there in Sycamore. Let's enjoy this, huh? Can't we just sit back and share? It's the joyful time of season. We need to start enjoying the joyful action that is taking place in college football today. And yet again, we can look in the mirror and find the enemy, and the enemy is us, meaning, the media, which is spending all of its time now talking about whether a black man or a white man should win NFL MVP. Or what's going on with LeBron and Bronny, or what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and what a cancer he can become. I mean, my God, can we turn to anybody but the Big Ten Network and the ACC Network or the SEC Network to hear anything about? Oh, by the way, the first ever college football playoff quarterfinals are about to take place on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad. It's you want something as badly as the people in college athletics wanted expansion to the playoffs. We got it. And all we heard after the first round was it was awful from people that should be caring about it. And then as we prepare for the next round, and I see some great games, I really do. And if a couple of them have to go sideways, it won't be the first time. How many bad Super Bowls did we go through before we actually got great ones on a consistent basis? I mean, college football is the only sport that is universally panned by the people that supposedly care about it the most. I mean, it's just amazing when you think about it. Those of us that have loved college football for as long as we have, I have people telling me, "Oh, Brando, you're too surfy, you're soft, you're this." But no, I'm trying to tell you, this is a good thing. You need to enjoy it. That's all. And if you find that problematic, then that's on you. I'm not gonna tell you that I suddenly believe that everything about the playoff was bad. I do think that the seeding situation was unfortunate, but they're going to fix that. And there are things that can be done between now and next year to do it. But I think the massive change will come in 26 when the new television contract, which, by the way, is unsigned, has not been signed yet. When the new television contract comes into play, maybe we'll see a little bit more in that because the money is needed. The revenue sharing circumstances are not going to go away. And the more interesting aspect for people that are in our business that actually care about the news being made in our business of college football would be, okay, how are you going to solve the issues with the portal and with NIL as we move into revenue sharing, which, by the way, most of that money is coming from television. How are you going to do that? And basically the commissioners, the people that govern the sport, along with the people involved heavily in college football, need to start concentrating on that. I mean, the coaches are just as responsible. Jim Mora puts out what he puts out today, saying there's tampering going on, and I'm going to start naming it. Jim, just, enjoy your 9th win at UConn. You might get a better deal. You guys might find yourself in the Big 12 one day. That could happen now. Like, enjoy what you just did. Coaches need to know that what's going on in their vacuum, in their insular world, is not what's the most important right now. It's a much grander landscape, and what can affect them and help them with these issues that they're currently facing are going to be decisions made at a much higher level than the guy that's carrying a whistle around his neck. Okay, so everybody here, ADs, presidents of universities, and conference commissioners all need to be a hell of a lot more responsible and control their narrative a little bit better than they currently are.
Tim, Arizona State and Boise State both coming off of the byes and both considered underdogs despite having those higher seeds technically. How much of a chance do you give Cam Scatterbo and company against Texas or Ashton Genty and the Broncos against the Nittany Lions?
Well, I believe Ashton Genty and Boise State's going to win. I said that when this thing started, and I'm standing by it. I believe they have the requisite tools to get it done against the Penn State team that, in my opinion, in big games can be sometimes underwhelming. Now, they played a tremendous game against SMU, but they played it in front of a partisan crowd, with a freshman quarterback who had an awful day, and that team needed him to be great. And I think the pressure of having to be great got to him, and it turned that game around. Now, is Penn State physically, man for man, on paper, a better team than Boise State? Yes. However, environment means a lot in this sport, as you know. And all you need to do is ask our friends at Oklahoma what that setting was like at the Fiesta Bowl in 2007, because it's going to be a pro-Boise State crowd, rest assured, when they meet tomorrow night. If Penn State wants to win this game, they're going to have to be more dynamic offensively than they were against SMU, and their defense is going to have some strong decisions to make on how many to put in the box and commit to the box to stop Genty, because Capers and a few other receivers on that Boise State team can burn you. They got a tight end that can burn you. And Dirk Cutter, as an offensive coordinator with an NFL mind, can burn you. And Maddox Madsden is a quarterback that if you give him single coverage all night long, is going to hit you. He's going to make a difference. And only a few times this year did they need that, but when they needed it, he delivered it. And I still believe if you look back at the Oregon game at the beginning of the year, you could say, well, yeah, Tim, but he was doing it against Fresno State. He was doing it against Wyoming. He was doing it. Go check the numbers in that game with Oregon. I rest my case right then and there. Check those numbers against Oregon. Boise State's got they've got players that could be on any one of these teams besides Boise State. This is not suddenly some G5 team that has lesser players than every other team in the playoff. That's a load of crap. Anybody that espouses that narrative is full of it. They haven't seen what I've seen. So it's strength on strength when you think about it. The greatest strength for Penn State is stopping the run. And Tom Allen's an awfully good defensive coordinator. But I think Cutter is going to do some interesting things formation-wise. And he may let Madsden wing it some on first down from time to time. That'll be the interesting part of this for me, will be how much will Genty command the ball or need to command the ball for them to be effective in moving the football. I think that Penn State is going to do what every other team has tried to do, and that is force Madsden to beat them. And you know what? Maddox is named after Greg Maddox, by the way. That first name is because of Greg Maddox, who was, as you know, a Bulldog. Well, that's what this kid is. Mm-hmm. He is a dog. Madsen is a dog. All you need to do is ask Spencer Danielson that. He'll tell you. And I think between those two and Capers, that great wide receiver they have, and there are more than that. I mentioned the tight ends are really good too. They got enough to win the game. Now, for Arizona State, I think that extra week probably helped Scadaboo because of all the carries he had to get them where they currently are, to get in this position. You know, they ran roughshod through a 3-3-5 Iowa State defense. It won't be as easy for them this time against a team as good as Texas. But he'll have his moments because he's that good. You know, Levin is another kid that I think can also make plays. Similar story, really, because they're going to force him to make plays because of the presence of James Scadaboo. I think they can hang with Texas for a while, but I think ultimately Texas has just too much weaponry, and I respect the play calling ability of Sark too much for them to pull off the upset. But that's what I see in those first two. And in the other two, Notre Dame and Georgia to me is a pick'em game, fellas. Absolute pick'em game. And then, you know, how well Georgia's quarterback does play is going to affect the outcome because I know Riley Leonard's going to play great. I know he's going to play great. And then on the other one, without a doubt, the flashiest one with the sun setting on the St. Gabriel's, as old Keith Jackson used to say. Oregon, in my mind, just has too many playmakers. And ultimately, I think Glenn Gabriel will make more plays than Will Howard will under pressure. So I like Oregon in that game.
You know, you mentioned Arizona State, Texas. Texas's defense is fantastic. Their offense, as you mentioned, with what Sark does, but their defense has just smothered people. Even when they lost to Georgia the first time at home, Georgia didn't really, except when they needed to at the end of the game. They had the long drive, converted a 3rd and 13 deep in their own territory. Yep. But they look like they have 14 players on their defense at one time.
Yeah. Absolutely. The saving grace, if there is one for Arizona State, is that Texas has sometimes, more than just a few times, sometimes, they have been their own worst enemy in the red zone and not converted. That Georgia game, the SEC championship, is a classic example. I mean, they outgained. They should have been up by at least 10, maybe 2 touchdowns at halftime of that SEC championship game, and they weren't. Arizona State's going to have to hope that they get a little bit of help from Texas bogging down in the red zone. If that were to happen, then maybe they've got a puncher's chance ultimately.
After the game, and I don't know if it was the first game, Indiana, Notre Dame, and even maybe during what happened on Saturday, you saw and heard what Kirk Herbstreit said when he said, "I don't want to hear about wins."
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell's he talking about? I mean, that's what isn't that the name? I understand in a way what he was trying to say. He's kind of got himself cornered the last couple of years, but what does he mean, Tim, that I don't want to hear about wins?
Well, about a week or so before that, Jim Phillips was on being interviewed by Reese Davis, and they were championing, obviously, SMU, provided they were close or competitive against Clemson, and could they still get in? You know, the whole, either or would the conference championship game be a detriment as opposed to a positive for a team like SMU? And Jim Phillips was making his case about, the teams that were 9-3 that they played, like Duke and Louisville, and how they won, even though they weren't a top 25 team. And then when it was over with, as soon as they got done with the interview, Nick Saban, who sits right next to Herbie, right, says, that was really wonderful what Commissioner Phillips had to say there about those tremendous performances in a losing effort. But what about top 25 wins? Where are they? I don't see them. Okay, we're splitting hairs. Louisville and Duke weren't top 25, but let's be real here, Coach Saban. What was the difference this year between a team that was ranked 25th and a team that was ranked 33rd? Okay, not much. Not this year. That's why we had so many upsets during the course of the year. That's why the word parity was being bandied about more than just about any other. And the NIL and the portal was responsible for all of this. And I think Herb Street and pretty much everybody on that set is impacted by whatever St. Nick has to say. And listen, I think he's great. I enjoy listening to Coach Saban on that show. I think he's been a tremendous asset for them, no doubt about it. What Kirk needs to understand, even though he is the most recognizable face and voice of college football on ESPN, is that he's not Nick Saban. So when Nick Saban says what he does, okay, like where is your top 25 wins, SMU? Nobody's going to go after him. He's Nick Saban. He won 7 national championships. Kirk, last I checked, good quarterback at Ohio State, never played in the NFL, and oh, by the way, has had a really good career in television. But saying I don't care about the wins, that doesn't wash quite as well as if Nick were to say it. Am I right?
Nope.
Does that sound legitimate?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Saban can get away with saying things that others can't. And Kirk, I think, was influenced by what Nick had to say, so that's something he decided to do. The other thing that happens to those guys, and I'll defend him a little bit on this, Smoak, is that they put these guys on these shows all the time, ad nauseum. How many more of these Embrace Debate shows you have to be on? And so they're forced to say things that are the same, but they don't want to say it exactly the same. So they try to find new ways to say something. And when they try to get creative that way, they just paint themselves into a corner. I would be, if he were smart, he would say, you know what, guys, I have to concentrate on a Thursday night game on the NFL. I got to concentrate on game day. I got to concentrate on Saturday. I'll give him some free career advice, okay? Troy Aikman and Joe Buck are doing Monday Night Football, making $18 million a year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in there.
Yep.
Between $10 to $18 million a year. Do you see them on all these shows every morning? No, you don't. So I would say what he's doing is of great value already. So unless they're going to pay him another $5 to $10 million to do First Take and Get Up and all this other stuff, because all it does is put him in a position where he's going to be criticized early and often. And that's sort of what, in my opinion, has happened.
Tim Brando, Fox Sports with his 365 Sports. Greg? Tim, I want to get into Greg Gumble, and we appreciate your time today. I remember when I was working one of my first Super Bowls back, it would have been in the 90s. And of course, he was a staple of so much studio shows, the NCAA men's basketball tournament where he was fantastic until he missed it last year or earlier this year. Just go and let everybody know you and your knowledge and what you saw and Greg Gumble in his career and how it had such an impact on so many people, including you.
Gumby was 10 years older than me, and our careers cross-sected as a result. And I go as far back, and if you allow me for just a moment to be a little self-promoting, because I want to remember Greg. That's the first and foremost part of this answer. But Saturday I'll be in Nebraska to do UCLA and Nebraska basketball, January 4th of 2025. January 5th of 1985 is when I started my career nationally on ESPN with Vital doing a game. And later that year, in March, I got a great assignment. You could say it was just a tremendous period for me because I was given the opportunity to work my first ACC tournament for ESPN in Atlanta at the Omni, the one that Georgia Tech won. And I was getting ready to do the Duke-Georgia Tech game in the semifinals with Dickie V. And as I was preparing to do the game, we have these IFP systems, where we have our microphone and we have our intercom system. And they just begun using what they call the mixed minus system, where we could hear the guys in the studio. In the past, in years prior to that, the guys in the truck would be doing a countdown on the throw. We never really heard what the studio guys were saying. We just responded and went on. Now they were able to have a direct throw from the studio host to the play-by-play guy. So we're about, 5 minutes out from going on the air, and it's Gumble's voice in my ear saying, "Tim, this is Greg. Can you hear me?" And I'm like, "Greg, how are you?" He said, "Hey, man, I just found out you're from Louisiana. You're a Louisiana guy like me. I was born in New Orleans." And, man, it was just such a friendly, nice to meet you, welcome to the team kind of approach that made me feel so comfortable. It was the biggest show at the time that I would have ever done, to do that semifinal game during championship week of March Madness. And so it was such a welcoming feeling. Well, fast forward to 86, I'm being hired to move to Connecticut in December of that year after the football season ended. I had been working sidelines on the CFA primetime team with Mike Patrick and Pat McAnally, and so they decided to hire me and move me to Connecticut to be both a play-by-play guy and a studio host. I did not know at the time that when I got there, because I was looking forward to meeting Greg, that Greg had just left. And the guy that I was replacing, or actually I think it was two of us that replaced him, the late, great John Saunders, who was my best friend in the time that I was at ESPN, he and I were about to start hosting the 7 o'clock Sports Center show, which had been Greg's show before he resigned to go to Madison Square Garden Network. So literally the end of the week before we got there, he had left. And as he left, he wrote a letter to the higher-ups about what the morale was like in the Sports Center newsroom. And he was a lovely man that cared deeply about everybody that he worked with and for. But there was the people that were in charge of Sports Center at that particular time were putting limitations of saying to Chris Berman he couldn't use his nicknames anymore. Remember the big kerfuffle about Chris could no longer say Bert be home by 11, or Jim 2 silhouettes on Deshays and all that. The guys that were in charge there were in Greg's estimation causing morale to really go downhill, and he knew he was leaving. He knew he was going to MSG, but he was concerned about the anchors that he was leaving behind because they were all unhappy, and he felt like that he would be just the first of a lot of guys that were hitting the exit. And so he wrote a letter. And the guy that had replaced the people that were later fired because of, in some measure, what he wrote to the higher-ups, took me aside, the new fella that was going to be in charge of Sports Center at that time, said to me, Tim, you're going to be doing the 7 o'clock show with John Saunders. And he said, that's the show that Greg Gumble used to do. And you'll be doing it during the week. You'll do like 3 days, have a couple of days off, do it again for 3 more days and whatnot. I said, so you're in the rotation for the 7 o'clock. And he said, and Greg Gumble's the reason why. And Greg left to go to MSG. But when he did that, he was trying to make life a lot better for all the producers, all the directors, all the other talent that he was leaving behind. So he was legendary there. He was put on such a high pedestal because of not just the way he was on the air, but the way he treated people off the air and the way he felt all people should be treated. And he really thought in his heart of hearts that they weren't being treated to that standard. And he wanted people to know about it that maybe weren't as concerned about the morale. Think about that. That's a heavy, heavy thing to do, but a really wonderful thing to do for the people that you're leaving behind if you think the place is special. And he did feel that ESPN was special, and he wanted to protect it. And he wanted the people that had been there that loved it, guys like Berman, Mees, George Grand, so many of the lifers that had been there, Bob Lee. He wanted it to be better. And about a week after he left and I had gotten there and John Saunders had gotten there, we were invited to a party that a bunch of the old guard was putting on for Greg when he was coming back to pick up some of his clothing and luggage and maybe some furniture from his house. And it was just such a warm night. It was just the ultimate feel good. And you knew right away this guy was special. Fast forward again to the 90s. I'm at CBS, had been there since 96. Greg was at NBC at that time. They lost the NFL to, guess who? CBS. Greg had left CBS and gone to NBC when CBS lost the NFL to Fox in 1994. So he's over at NBC. And then when NBC lost the contract to CBS in 98, he came over from there to do play-by-play, not to do the studio, but to do play-by-play. But after he did that for, I think, 4 years, working with Phil Simms and doing 2 Super Bowls, he moved back, switched places with Jim Nantz, you might recall. And Jim had been hosting the NFL on Sunday. I was hosting it on Saturdays. And so in the early 2000s, Greg and I would see each other every weekend. And our paths would cross in the hallways of the broadcast center. And we'd talk about all kinds of things. He loved the Rolling Stones. I loved the Eagles and Electric Light Orchestra and the Doobie Brothers. He had a great personality, just a vivacious sense of humor. But he was a very private man, a very private person with his family. And that's one of the reasons I think he never let anyone know that it was him that was among the family concerns when he stepped away in March of last year. Those of us that were close to him, and I share the same agent that he has, we were made aware. But he didn't want to be a burden to anyone, and he didn't want to put his family in a position of having to deal with so much attention coming his way because of the fight that he was having to wage against cancer. He knew that it was going to be a hard fight. He was going to fight it, but if he didn't win it, he was going to be okay with that. That's just the way it is. He worked all the way up until really he got too sick to work. So he loved it, just like I love it. But his approach to life and his approach to people was his greatest strength. His humanity was even better than his professional capability. And I think that's what you're seeing. This outpouring of love and care and emotion for his memory is due in large measure to that. We shared the same love for music. We didn't share the same politics at all, but that was never a problem, never an issue. He was as kind to the guy that was cleaning up the studio in New York as he was to the guy that was making sure that he had that magnificent seat on Studio 43 doing the NFL Today. He was just a wonderfully kind-hearted, good, solid human being to everyone he ever touched. And I don't think he ever knew or even cared to know how great a professional he really was. It came that easily to him. He was humbled by the fact that people made a big deal. He would be embarrassed by the big fuss that everybody's making over him right now. But it's understood and I think deserved for us to be making a big fuss over him.
Tim, Merry Christmas, of course, that's the last week. Happy New Year tomorrow night late, and we'll hopefully one more time we get to the semifinals and championship game, get your feedback on the teams and the matchups we have, and also some of the teams you broadcast this year. We appreciate your time.
Love to do it, David. All the best to you guys. Happy 2025 to you all.
You too. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us on Many Things College Football on 365 Sports. When we come back, Phil Bennett. He's on with us every Monday, has been basically every single Monday throughout the football season. He will join us. He's next. This is from Houston, the Post Oak at the Hilton in the Galleria, 365 Sports. Man, what Mike Mosel's done at the Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium off I-35 is just phenomenal. Of course, they just celebrated their 10th anniversary, and they're going to do something like that even more as we get into 2025. But how about this? January 18th, an exclusive culinary experience featuring Executive Chef Lee in a live cooking demonstration. Watch as he creates fresh, innovative dishes to inspire your palate for 2025. Start the new year with great food and even better company and the amenities. And what a classy experience it is at the Baylor Club. Tell them you're a part of 365 Sports' viewing audience or SicEm365.com, and they will also give you a discount towards your membership and even take off a month or two of your dues. 2025, and make sure you're a part of what the Baylor Club has to offer inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in Waco.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84 and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Live from the Hilton Post Oak for the Texas Bowl, this is 365 Sports. Our Kinder's Texas Bowl coverage is brought to you by Camille Johnson Realtors, Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, IdealMRI.com, Marco's Pizza.
We're back. The Hilton Post Oak, thanks to our Nidra for helping set up our location here. We're not in the lobby area. That would have been better, but we're down the hallway and in the director's room. And by the way, Brandon Burgess, San Antonio, Keith Starr just walked in, Tyler, among others who are here to see us today. Art Strickland's about to walk in the door, and many others who have been here. And yet again, thank you. Raymond and Mario were the first ones to come in. And Mario, thank you for serving our country when you did, sir. Great to have you there. We're now joined by Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, former Baylor defensive coordinator, with us on 365 Sports. How was your Christmas, Phil?
It was excellent. Had all our family here and just very thankful, like most of us.
So let's start with Baylor and LSU. It's the Texas Bowl. You came in a year after Baylor had lost to Illinois. Art hired you to come in the next year after Illinois beat them up in this bowl game. Rule won a game here against Vanderbilt. But let's discuss this game. LSU, there's some guys on that team that are different. They got some difference makers. I don't know how many of them are going to play because some of them are left. They're going to enter the pro portal, whatever. Your thoughts about the challenge for Baylor against LSU and Brian Kelly?
The first thing that comes to my mind in this game is Baylor keeping its groove going. LSU is a name, which I've coached there. It's a great place. I think they match up very well with LSU. It's my people in Baton Rouge tell me that both offensive tackles, the tight end, the Taylor kid, that's an absolute double threat, and then the best receiver, Lacey, are not playing, along with maybe one or two of their corners and a couple of their D linemen. So I think Baylor has a matchup that whether they played or not, I think it would be a really good matchup for Baylor.
Coach, what was your favorite part about coaching during bowl season? And also, what are maybe one or two of the top memories that come to mind from your time at Baylor playing in bowl games?
The first thing that comes to my mind is my first bowl game. And I'll never forget this. When I write my book at Baylor, it will be there. You know, we were so raw defensively, but we patched together that first year. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think we won 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
And we started, and we got a lot of takeaways. We had to do different things because we weren't great talent. Well, we're fixing to go out, Craig, to the game. We're in San Antonio. I couldn't find KJ Morton. I mean, literally, we're fixing to kick off. And somebody told me that they found him outside at the ticket counter because a group of his people, the tickets got screwed up. And we committed. I mean, we go out there. He gets there for kickoff, and Sarkisian was the head coach at Washington, and it was a shootout. And I swear I'd never forgive him. And this is honest God truth. He gave up like 3 touchdowns because I wore his ass out so bad. And he blamed me. I blamed him. But the game, we ended up winning the game. And I'll never forget Art telling me this. He said, "Coach, relax. We won." I think it was like, what was it, like 56, 53? But,
yeah, 57, 50 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And I swear to God, I said, if we ever go to another bowl, I will never take my eyes off these kids. And, of course, I remember the last bowl.
Yeah.
You know, Art's last game. It was such a good win down in Florida against a very good North Carolina team. And I think during my 6 years there, we were 4-2. I like to work the kids. I think it's a fun time, but I think it's all time. You get some matchups. My most disappointing was really 2. Was the UCF. We didn't play very good, and the Michigan State, which we lost it as coaches. We made mistakes and should have won that game, and we kept it. Our decisions kept us from winning it.
67-56 was that game.
It was crazy.
And as you won the game. It's like when I saw you after the TCU game, 61-58. You give up 58, and you're thrilled to death. You won the game.
Yeah. Well, you know what happened? You sit there and you realize, you look at all these games. I mean, look at the Iowa State Miami. This game nowadays is made for offenses. Hell, they want points, and they're getting them. And it's just finding a way to win. I have no idea. You know, people trying to bet these games, how do they bet these games not knowing who's playing? It's a crapshoot.
So we got the second round of the playoffs. Obviously, the first round, in terms of competitiveness, pretty disappointing. I'd imagine it's tough to play a team twice. How tough do you think it is for Ohio State and Oregon to prepare to play a third time?
I've read a lot about Oregon already sort of writing their swan song. You know, we had to go to this school, we had to go here, we had to go there to play. Well, the truth of the matter is, I mean, the first game, they were extremely lucky to win at Oregon. Now, I'm sure there were other aspects in the game they thought they played better, but I see that as being a game that I really think Ohio State can take care of Oregon and maybe beat them, dominantly. It'll be interesting to watch that. But I sort of have that feeling that might happen in the Rose Bowl.
So you faced off against Sarkisian in 11 down in San Antonio when he was at Washington in that game. A lot has changed in his life, and a lot of things have been incredible with what he's been able to bounce back from personally, then goes to Alabama. Now when he's got Texas on a roll. As someone that faced him, I've always heard, not just from broadcasts, but that he is a brilliant play caller. What makes him unique as a play caller?
The first time that I faced him, he and Lane Kiffin were co-coordinators at USC. And they had been getting on Bill Snyder. I think it was like around 2000. They had been getting on Snyder about not playing a daunting schedule, So we picked 2 schools. And he told me, he said, pick who you want to play. Well, at the time before, I didn't know that Pete Carroll was going to get that job. It was like 2 years earlier. I said, we need to play USC. because Ohio State had gone through the deal with Tressel, and we didn't want to mess with him. Right then, lo and behold, they end up Carson Palmer. They were loaded, and we opened the season in the Coliseum, and there was 90,000 people there. And I'm telling you, half of them were Kansas State people. And Sarkisian was the play caller, and we beat them 10-6. But I'm going to stop there. I told Bill Snyder after the game, I said, I don't think they're going to lose again. I mean, and because he really did. He had Carson Palmer. He had a what I call a screen package that was unbelievable. He knew how to stretch the field, and he has always believed in running the football. When we played them in 11, we beat them, but probably the reason we beat them is they couldn't run the football on us. So one thing we did, we said, hey, you're not going to beat us running the football, and they almost beat us in the passing game. But he is a guy, I think, at Texas that has gotten better and better of just realizing what the run game does to it devastates the defense. And I think last year you saw him get better and better at that. And I really do. I think he calls an excellent game. And I think when he gets in a rhythm, he's deadly.
Coach, Cam Scatterbo there for Arizona State's obviously a heck of a player. They're quarterback too, but that's kind of the story is it's Cam Scatterbo, so you know a very good Texas defense is going to be keyed in on him. Do you think Arizona State can run the football still, and or what do you think they are capable of doing in this matchup with Texas to make it closer than Vegas and everybody else expects?
Craig, last week against Clemson, and I'm saying this because I believe it, I thought the quarterback at Clemson was the best quarterback on the field last week. I mean, he threw for almost 400 yards, and they did a great job of stopping the run, but Texas did not play great pass defense. I think that if they got to be careful of loading too much up for Scatterbo, because this Michigan State transfer is good enough, and they have good enough receivers to do some damage throwing the ball. So I think they better have a balance with that. I'm not saying that they won't stop Scatterbo, but he is. I don't think anybody stopped him all year. One of the things I've always said, his yardage can't be significant yards, meaning for points and put him in position for points. He might get 100 yards, but make it consequential on the final score aspect.
Yeah, they run. Arizona State has, as Craig brought up, with Scatterbo, but Texas's defense has not allowed anyone to run on that. Georgia kind of beat them a little bit, kind of thumped them a little bit, but it's like nobody has just taken the ball, and I don't remember, and run it down their throat consistently.
I don't either. I really don't.
Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach with us. Mondays at 5 o'clock here. We're live in Houston today on 365 Sports. You and I were trading a few texts, and we might have even talked on the phone about a week ago when I mentioned to you that we're going to be out for the week of Christmas. And we started to discuss how many innovative offensive coaches that you have coached with in your career. Doesn't have to be the wide open stuff like what Baylor ran, but you have been a part of and worked with some of the most innovative minds in college football on the offensive side. You thought much about that and reflected much on that?
I think I told you, a friend of mine that's a Sports Illustrated writer said they were talking about older coaches. I think there was only like 2 or 3 of us that had coached 6 decades. I started in the 70s, finished in the 2020s. And one of the things that come up, they said, let's look who all his head coaches were. Well, the guy that I first gave me my first job was Emory Bellard, invented the wishbone. And Lord knows what, you can go all the way back to Alabama, U.S., with Bear Bryant took the wishbone, and Oklahoma. And what Emory did was totally, changed the history of the game. And then when I went to Kansas State, Bill Snyder built that program back from non-competitive at any level to a national championship caliber program with a quarterback run game. And then being fortunate enough to go to Baylor at a time where Art Briles was not only playing fast, but we spread the field from sideline to sideline, and you couldn't sub, you couldn't, everything was tempo. So, and I'd never really thought that, but I knew I'd seen a lot of things, and it was probably three of the most innovative things probably in the last 50, 60 years of college football that's happened, and it's happening right now in the NFL. It's interesting.
Yep. I watched that game last night between Penix, Atlanta, and Jaden Daniels in Washington.
Wow.
My goodness. As a Washington fan, I was like miserable and happy. And yet again, just watching these two young quarterbacks coming straight out of the college game and making an impact. Penix, first start, but man, are those kids fun to watch.
One of the things, Smokey, that I thought Cliff and the coordinator with the Falcons, they're using their ability. If you watched the Jets versus Buffalo, I mean, Aaron Rodgers all drop back, getting hammered, and then you get the quarterback at Buffalo, the movement game. I got a text the other night from Aaron Glenn, who I'm close to, and he said, "Coach, I want to ask you a question about." And it was the power read. They had just played Buffalo. And he said, how do you play this? The college game, especially just like you said, with quarterback like Daniels, I think he had 100 yards rushing, did he not?
127.
127.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is a different time and age for these defensive coordinators in the NFL.
All right. I want to go back to with Baylor and LSU tomorrow at 2:30. And we've seen this team and the story and the journey. You've been there every week, and there were times when when BYU was up on them 21-0, 28-7 after they'd blown the game against Colorado, that I just no way they were going to turn this season around, and especially not to the point where they are now. They just stayed patient and yet maybe tweaked a little bit here and there. Phil, just can you kind of grade or give your summary of what you've seen since you were in the game for 40-plus years and what they did with this team this year, no matter what happens tomorrow?
I think you can remember when we talked. Obviously, I defended Coach Aranda at Colorado. I liked what he did. I just didn't think they got it executed. And I didn't think they played it right. The next week, it was like we were, we didn't show up, and it was a mindset. And we all talked about how do you come out of this? And one of the things that we all said, and I pounded on, is, hey, don't listen to the naysayers. Close the doors. It's us. It only matters what we think. We're the only ones that can get out of this together. I think Dave Aranda and that staff did a magnificent, just a unbelievable job of keeping the kids involved, keep them determined, and keeping them with a focus of saying, we can do this. And that's where it starts. That's without question. And now the players say, you know what? These guys believe in us. They think we're better than what we've shown, and they're going to be better. And I'm sure in those meetings, I'm sure those coaches told them, hey, there's some things we screwed up too. One of them, we played the wrong quarterback, and then we got to do this on defense. I think Dave got more involved with the defensive play calling, which I think was instrumental. And I don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And I think that they said, all right, we've got a quarterback, and I think it took off from there. It lit fuses saying, hey, if we get a stop, they'll score. And then the offense says, hey, if we score, they're going to hold them. We're going to win some games. And then I think the opposite effect, it became contagious. The optimism, the expectancy changed. And I truly believe that throughout that thing, Dave Aranda never changed. I don't think Dave's going to get up and lead cheers or any of that stuff. But I think what he did He said, if we're willing to do these things, we can come out of this. And they did. And I think it's been – I think tomorrow at 2:30 it can be a great season-ending victory as Baylor's had probably since 2012 when we beat UCLA so soundly.
Yeah, you did, and hammered them on defense, but also didn't have to throw the ball much, physically beat them up. They had another edge commitment, another transfer portal, a kid from Oregon. They got an edge rusher from Tulane. They've got players from A&M and Alabama, Louisville, Auburn, Oregon, among some of the other schools in the not FCS, but the G5s where you can find transfer portal. They seem to be taking advantage of the momentum, which they didn't do 4 years ago.
Kids that go there, and, it's like Eddie Lackey told me, he goes, I didn't know anything about Baylor. And then when I got there, I thought, wow, what a hidden gem. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. Even though I played against them in college, the run that we had was good as anywhere you've ever been at any level. And I think that they will seize the moment. And I think, once again, let's make sure, those portals, it doesn't change. It's still recruiting, Smokey, and you've got to pick the right ones. You can't pick guys in the portal especially that can't play, because there is not going to be red shirts. It's not going to be developed. Their ass better be able to help you next year.
Hey, man, Happy New Year to you, Coach. Thank you very much for your time.
Happy New Year to you guys.
You too.
Let's get this win.
Yes, sir. Phil Bennett. I love the way he has said, and really even back 2, 3, 4 years ago about we. He says when he refers to Baylor, he's coached at A&M and LSU and Oklahoma and Kansas State and Arizona State and Purdue and on. And he always says that when he's referring to Baylor. We appreciate his time on Mondays. When we come back, we'll come back with Mike Scarborough. He covers LSU, TigerBait.com. This is 365 Sports. I remember when I first got a call about Texas Beef House, a big, huge ranch right outside of Tyler. The Duvall family, Angus cattle. I've been there. I've visited there. I've watched what they've done. Gorgeous farm-raised Angus cattle. They're going to have the next online auction, by the way, January the 9th. It's an online auction. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com. Create your own account. There's BidOnBeef.com, which is what they've used now for the last several months with online and live auctions. Some of you are viewers and listeners who have bought beef from them. Online auctions. Now they offer it to you with these online auctions. January the 9th is the next one. And you get to pay what you want to pay. Yeah, you can go to the grocery store, and there might be 5 or 6 different packages of ribeye steaks, and you could pick and choose the size of the marbling or whatever. With TexasBeefHouse.com and the online auctions, you get to go online and pick what you want, pay what you want. If it's a little bit too much, you walk away. If it's what you want, you keep on staying involved in the auction, and you will have the best when it comes to Angus and Wagyu steaks. Beef. The Duvall family. It's TexasBeefHouse.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.CamilleJohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Edward Jones financial advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones financial advisors Ben Erlinson, Chuck Verno, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, who invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533, Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones financial advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI, ask your doctor for an Ideal MRI. Visit us at idealmri.com or call us at 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you. Red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Live from the Hilton Post Oak for the Texas Bowl, this is 365 Sports. Our Kinder's Texas Bowl coverage is brought to you by the Baylor Club, Pioneer Steel and Pipe, Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac, Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine, GXG Baylor's NIL Collective.
All right, we're back. We do appreciate the Hilton Post Oak in the Galleria for helping us set up here. Good friend Keith Starr from Tyler is here. We just said, again, hello and goodbye. Mario, I told you he's a U.S. veteran, Army vet, and then also Raymond, who are here. Art Strickland, his lovely wife, and also here today, and many others that have come by and watched us as we've done the show. We're now joined by Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. Nobody knows LSU better than he does, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Mike, what is the interest level, the focus, locked-in feeling you get with LSU in tomorrow's game with Baylor?
I think it's kind of a late arriving interest. I think also what probably plays into the late arriving interest is what LSU honestly has done in the transfer portal the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changed the mood and the future outlook of the fan base. And I think now that you're, less than 24 hours away from kickoff, I think there's a lot of new interest. Of course, LSU, sold weeks ago their allotment of tickets, a huge LSU alumni base in the Houston area. And so I think it's going to be a really good game. Two teams that are evenly matched. It could go either way.
Mike, you brought up the transfer portal. I know on 3, they're the number 1 ranked team in the transfer rankings right now with 14 guys, including 8 4-stars. Just what's been kind of the recipe that Brian Kelly's cooked up there and just the focus of the portal here early on?
It's amazing. I mean, I'll be honest with you. 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was very skeptical. And what they've done has been absolutely amazing. Give major credit to Brian Kelly, his staff, Austin Thomas, the Bayou Traditions Fund. I mean, look, it's all money now. Mm-hmm. And certainly there was a lot of money that was freed up when Bryce Underwood flipped the prize 5-star quarterback that made a lot of it possible. But they've got just about everything they needed. I'd like to see him get another tight end, another defensive back or two. But there'll be time for that. You still got a spring portal period. But what they've done so far with getting wide receivers and offensive linemen, edge rushers, a really nice punter. Center was a big need on that offensive line. They got a great one there. I've all of a sudden gone from my future outlook of LSU next season from 7-5, 8-4 to thinking 9-3, 10-2 possibly if they stay healthy.
How much did they have to do that? It's been a team that, like, it just kind of existed in a way. Garrett, of course, you know Garrett, producing our show, has been kind of not happy about this team, and even from the beginning kind of called it. So how critical was some sort of, like, feel good to close out this year?
It's very, very important. And look, you no doubt about it. You get these 14 practices in December, and if you can win the bowl game, regardless of whether you think it matters in the grand scheme or not, it's better than having a fifth loss. And then you go into the off-season program, like BK said, that one of his early or late November, early December press conferences, he's going to have like 37 either redshirt or true freshmen in his off-season conditioning program, plus all these transfer portal guys that will show up at midterm. So, you get to spring football, and it's going to be, I think, very exciting. And, but I think a big part of it too is, I think the reason why there was, not only the skepticism, but even though I think the schedule on paper is not bad, it still flips in the negative way for LSU next year, because you open up at Clemson. LSU, of course, has lost 5 straight openers. But you go to College Station, you go to Tuscaloosa, you go to Norman, Oklahoma to end the season. And, you get South Carolina, which what a job that the Gamecocks did this past season, and they're excited about their program. So it was just really, to go back, the transfer portal was absolutely huge to get this fan base to, I think, re-engage and tune in and really have a much more positive outlook of the future, and not just everybody, doing the math on the back of an envelope. What's the buyout next year? What's the buyout in 2026, 27? I don't think anybody's doing that now.
How much do you think LSU fans are anticipating seeing Dave Aranda again, just on the opposite sideline?
I think absolutely. Very much beloved here. 2019 national championship. Last time LSU had a semblance of a strong defense, to be truthful. I know him and Orgeron didn't get along there at the end, and Orgeron wanted to go to a 4-3, and then we know what happened after that. But how can you not like Dave Aranda? I mean, friendly guy, soft-spoken, cerebral. You guys recall. I mean, I was doing shows with you when you hired him. I didn't know that he wanted to be a head coach. To me, he seemed like a guy that was more behind-the-scenes guy, and maybe I was a little skeptical there. I don't know what your guys' evaluation is now after these handful of years and where it's heading, but look, he's either way. No one's going to deny that the LSU fan base hold him in very high regard, regardless.
It looks like maybe a bad few weeks on Wall Street, depending on the economy, or something's happening worldwide where the stocks are way down at 2-7, and then he's a genius Jedi. Nothing can be any better than what he did at 12-2. Then the next year they finished poorly. Then last year was awful. And he's been on the hot seat. And I mean, at times I wondered about how long he would last. Then they go 2-4. He's admitted he's changed. He's grown up. He's matured. He's learned a little bit about, in fact, even this year, talking about stop being so worried about whether guys are going to class. Not that doesn't matter, but other people need to do that. And he got into just football. And always heard from even you, Mike, from the beginning, his strength is talking ball. His strength is X's and O's. And that's what we've seen even after a rough start this year.
And look, you can go and switch head coaches and pay all these buyouts and do all that. And sometimes it just makes sense to stick with somebody. I mean, what were we saying 4 or 5 months ago? It was just like, who's going to get fired earlier in the season?
Mm-hmm.
Billy Napier or Sam Pittman? Right? That was a foregone conclusion. They're both safe.
Yep.
If you would have said, man, if something would have happened to Brian Kelly, something health-wise a year or two ago, who would have been the top of the list? You would have said Norvell. Now you'd laugh at that. It's coaching is a fickle thing, and there's some very smart and strong coaches that lose their jobs, and sometimes you just need to stick it out, I think.
Mike, final thing for me, I know there's been a lot of opt-outs, declarations, what have you, so it's not going to be 100% LSU or 100% really anybody during bowl season, but what kind of roster are we looking at and Tigers team are we looking at head into the game tomorrow?
Well, I think, look, I don't think it's as bad as it was the last time LSU was in the Texas Bowl. No doubt not having the tight end Mason Taylor out there and your two tackles. There's a couple of DBs that won't be out there, but LSU fans will argue they're better off without them. Look, C.J. Daniel, Kyron Lacey gone. Going to give some guys some opportunity. Chris Hilton, if he picks up where he left off, Aaron Anderson, to me, was kind of the MVP of the offense. But I think LSU is, Baylor coming off the win streak. I think it's gonna be a close game. Brian Lazar, our senior writer, is predicting LSU by 3. I know Preston Guy, who Garrett's going to do a show with later on, is going to pick LSU to lose tomorrow. And I haven't figured out where I'm at, but I could go either way, to be honest.
Mike, would you agree or disagree? And a lot of times it's where you are, and we try to be as open-minded on this, conference pride as anyone, and understand what the SEC has, what they deliver, what they've done when it comes to national championships. But even are you at times annoyed by, but we didn't have all of our players here, when it seemed like nobody has all of their players entering a bowl game if they win or lose?
No, the only teams that are holding on to everybody's are playoff teams. If you're not in the playoffs and you're in these secondary bowls, you're going to have lots of opt-outs. That's just how it's going to be. I think overall, though, I think LSU's probably faring a little bit better as far as that regards than they have in previous years. But I think the other part of it, talking about conference pride and what we're seeing in these games, and I think part of the reason why, and I get accused of being negative on LSU a bit, I was at 8-4 to start the season, and after they lost the opener, I was thinking 7-5 could be a real possibility. But I think every fan base from an SEC perspective is recalibrating what their expectations are. Even those teams from the SEC that made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is deep anymore. I maintain none of these SEC teams that are in the playoffs could stay on the field with the top 2 or 3 SEC teams from a decade ago. They're just not as deep. But between NIL, transfer portal, so forth, I don't know if it's ever going to get back to where you're looking at a Georgia or the 2011 LSU Alabama or 2019 LSU or 2020 Alabama, whatever you want to bring up, where you can say, oh yeah, they're about to lose 13 guys to the draft, but look what they've got behind them. None of these schools have a whole lot behind them anymore. They're just not deep. Who are the juggernaut teams? That's why you see these teams barely in the top, inside the top 25 or not in the top 25, being real factors to beat top 5 opponents. It's just because who is the juggernaut team?
So do you see the portal where it appeared it might just make the rich richer like NIL might, but this is creating, in some cases, even though there seem to be 4 to 6 teams like Ohio State or Oregon or maybe Texas or whoever, Georgia, I don't know. Do you feel like the portal is actually creating some parity?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think the teams that have typically been your top 10, 12 recruiting classes year in and year out are probably going to be many of the same that they've always been. LSU's, finally gotten their act together NIL wise, and I think that it's going to get even bigger there. But the difference is that if you keep stacking all these recruits, and where LSU has, always had some, 5-star, and Alabama with 5 stars second on the depth chart, those kids aren't willing to wait anymore. So it evens the playing field because, Baylor and Colorado and teams outside the SEC if the shoe's on the other foot, you can go pilt for one here and one there. And so if you're an SEC team that has had a run like that, and maybe you didn't do as good of a job in the transfer portal in the offseason, well, if you get to November with a rash of injuries, you're in trouble.
Yeah, it seems like even though there's still separation, it's tighter. It's so much tighter. We may not see.
It's absolutely tighter.
Yeah, we may not see that in the college football playoff this year, but we might. We don't know because of what happens with the quarterfinals coming up. Of course, tomorrow night and then also on Wednesday. Mike, I love the passion. I love what you mentioned. Garrett's an LSU guy. Garrett, you want to close it out with him because you could hear, I don't know if you feel the same way, but you could feel with what they've done in the portal, as Craig brought up, that it's given them a little bit of that oomph.
No, it really has. I think that it's been impressive what they've been able to do through the portal. And also with that, Mike, is having Harold Perkins back next year to go with the additions you brought into the portal. What does that mean for this team? And was that something that y'all saw coming down there, or was that kind of a pleasant surprise?
Yeah, I've been knowing for a month Perkins was coming back.
Okay.
And we were talking about it on every show, our live shows every week. And the only thing I'm dreading about that is the question every press conference in the spring and off season: how healthy is Perkins, and is he finally going to, turn into a legit linebacker or star, or how are you finally going to be able to find a way to utilize him where he's a true guy on every down? And so that's not going to change. That we've had those same questions the last few years, but. I think Bluff Baker on that side of the ball, I'll say this. I think Baker and what he's going to have, particularly now with those edge rushers that they've added, he's about to start putting together some defenses that I think are going to get LSU back to what you're expecting and back to what is close to some of those Dave Aranda defenses. I absolutely believe that.
So do they know what the hell they're going to do with Perkins? Are they going to put him in a position to be who he was as a freshman, or are they still confused by that?
We'll see. The problem with Perkins is he's got a running back body. He doesn't have the length of a typical edge rusher. If you saw him in high school, how many recruiting guys that I talked to that said he was actually the best running back in Texas his senior year, and that he might need a couple of years to actually learn to be a linebacker? Well, we know what he did as a true freshman, but, people figured that out, how LSU was utilizing him. In the last game with A&M and in Georgia in the SEC title game that freshman year he was ineffective. And so then you want to make him a true linebacker, and that's really hasn't worked out for him. Like I said, he's kind of a tweener. So now talking about using at the star position, we're going to see how they get it done. The fact of the matter is a defense that did improve. What was it? I think it finished 53rd. Is that right? The linebacker position was probably the strength of the defense. I think the linebackers actually played better after Perkins got hurt, because you weren't trying to shoehorn him in there and having the other guys having to play out of position when he was in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, man, love the knowledge and the insight. We knew we could get that from you. I wanted to ask you about the Perkins thing. I'm glad we brought that up, and we appreciate your time. 2:30 tomorrow, LSU Baylor. Ought to be fun. Two teams. I know Baylor's walking into this thing. They're red hot, and whether or not it plays over tomorrow, we'll see. Thank you very much, Mike. Have a great New Year, and we'll talk to you again around the corner.
Yeah, Happy New Year to y'all, and good luck on all your bowl coverage tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Mike Scarborough. We love him. Tiger Bait covers LSU with us on 365 Sports to wrap up today's coverage. If there's anything else we need to add, let me know. Thank you again, Raymond, Mario, Mike, Ted, Randall, Cam, Art, Brandon, Keith, and many others who dropped by our location down the hallway from the lobby inside the director's, not suite, but director's room here. And Garrett got us set up early this morning. And thanks to Arnita for helping put all of this, to get all of this put together. And then who was the guy who was the tech? He, oh my God, I thought I wrote it down. We'll mention him tomorrow because he was great in making sure we had everything that we had here. And we've had the technical part of it. Garrett's been great, right?
No, that's been solid. I've been really impressed. I was nervous about getting it set up, but we got it rolling, and we're good.
No, we did. All right, Craig, thank you very much. Thanks to all of our sponsors who also specifically were a part of today's coverage and tomorrow morning's pregame coverage. And Garrett Ross, we appreciate him. We're back tomorrow, 9 o'clock until 10, our pregame show, along with KWTX Game Day Live. Until then, I'm David Smoak. This is 365 Sports, and have a great night.